Hello and welcome to the Kongversation. I'm Hyle Russell, and my co-host today is a first-time Kongversation co-host. This is going to be the first of a few first-time co-hosts over the next month plus as we head towards the planet core and beyond. You may know the name Kiddy Kong Facts from back in the day on the former Twitter. It's now a bird fossil. But we won't be talking much about Kiddy Kong on this episode, unfortunately. But another definition for a term that we will be discussing, another definition for radiance, is happiness. And a synonym for happiness is joy. So please welcome to the show, Joy Content.
Hello, everyone.
Hi.
This goes to show that if you want to be on the Kongversation, you just have to make a gimmick account about an obscure Donkey Kong character and run that for 3 years first.
Yeah, and then wait like half a decade after that. Yeah.
I look forward to Trough and Scoff Facts showing up and being the next one.
Where is that account? I have been waiting so patiently, but my patience is wearing thin. I am not getting any younger.
And then they can be invited for the next game when we find nipple rings discarded in a fossil.
I'm still hoping that the next Donkey Kong Country game will have Trough and Scoff's Piercing Pagoda on the map screen. And this is something, we know we have Nintendo's ear somehow with this stuff. They are picking stuff up from the fandom. So Nintendo, if you are listening, Trough and Scoff's Piercing Pagoda, I will not sue you. You can have that one for free. You're welcome. But no, thank you for being here, Joy. It's, I guess, long overdue. You've been angling to be on a Donkey Kong Country 3 related episode, and we'll get into the specific reasons why I thought of you when I was playing this world originally. But, yeah, you know, if Donkey Kong Bonanza has, like, a 4-act structure, then Radiance Layer, Sublayers 1200 to 1204, I would argue it comes at the end of Act 3. And I'm really, really looking forward to discussing this world. It might not go as long as Cameron and I did for the Racing Layer, which is ironically one of the shortest worlds in the game, where this one is one of the longest. But in my defense, you know, this doesn't reintroduce two very familiar, very beloved characters that we could then spend 4.5 hours talking about. But our spoiler policy is still in place for now. I know it's getting a little long in the tooth. I know it's getting a little bit cumbersome to avoid talking about the big, sexy end of game spoilers, but, you know, I am adamant that we wait a little bit. We'll probably lift it at some point in October, but for this episode, there won't be any spoilers beyond World 12 of Bonanza. Sublayers 1200 to 1204. Nothing beyond 1204 will be discussed on this episode. So if you haven't played beyond there, you are good to go without fear of late game revelations being ruined. So you can save your angry letters for later. This is the Radiance Layer episode of the Kongversation. I can't wait. Well, actually, I can, because first we need to talk about some due diligence and some shameless plugs. All right. So my post-Bonanza reaction video, still coming. I still have to edit out all of my orgasmic faces. I have to improve the lighting a little bit. It will be coming. Don't worry. I'm sorry for the delay. I'm a terrible content creator. I am the antithesis of joy content. But if you would like to improve my production values so it doesn't take several weeks to get what is supposed to be an immediate reaction video up on YouTube, think about becoming a DK Vine patron at dkvine.com/Patreon. Hey, there's perks involved. Yeah, that's right. We'll throw some perks your way. What kind of perks would you like? How about listening to the Kongversation as we record it live? Yeah, you can intrude upon our recording sessions. You can listen in like a dirty little peeping Tom, or whatever the audio only equivalent of a peeping Tom is. Hello to Jem, who is a DK Vine staffer and could listen to this even if she wasn't a patron. Hello to Just Andre. Hello to Chocolate Milk Drinker. Hello to the Noipoi. Hello to Just a Banana in My Pocket. Hello to March Rose. Thank you for joining us on this weekday recording. So, Joy, you are also, as your name would suggest, a content creator. What is going on in the world of Joy content? What would you like to publicly promote here on the Kongversation?
Mostly I do Twitch streams on my Twitch channel, Joy Content. I also have a bi-weekly Doctor Who podcast where I'm watching all of classic Doctor Who. It's called Genesis of the Doctor. We're almost at the 4th Doctor there.
Wow, that's going to take a while.
Yeah. I occasionally post YouTube videos too, but mostly they don't come out that often.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I know that feeling. I'm mostly my podcast, and then I try to do YouTube videos, but then when I have a big, sexy new Donkey Kong game to spend so far over 150 hours on, it's kind of hard to do much else beyond maintaining my website and the podcast. And then it's like, oh, I should do a new lore video. Well, let me fully understand the lore of Bonanza before I continue. So everything's kind of in a holding pattern for now. But yeah, I have some opinions on Doctor Who, but mostly I haven't gotten into classic Doctor Who. I'm one of those filthy, dirty, like, people who only got into the new Who starting, in the mid-aughts onward. But I really...
That's why I decided... That's why I wanted to do a podcast to watch classic Who, because I had only watched modern Who.
Yeah. I will say that I think Matt Smith's Doctor should be set on fire. I agree with our own Matt Corno on that. But beyond that, I don't really have many strong opinions. That's my big Doctor Who hot take, in that I want Matt Smith's Doctor to be on fire, flaming hot, burned to a crisp.
I guess he kind of was on fire at the end there.
Yeah, I mean,
a pretty big fire coming out of him.
there were some good episodes. I just found his Doctor to be insufferable. So I was happy when Peter Capaldi took over, because I was like, yeah, okay, I can not grit my teeth anymore when I watch this show, except for the episodes that are really bad, like when the moon was a dragon egg or whatever. Anyway, that's enough about Doctor Who. Let's talk about Donkey Kong. Donkey Kong Bananza Sublayers 1200 to 1204, the Radiance Layer. 5 sublayers in this one. And, they're all of varying sizes, so it's not as sprawling as you would think, but this is one of those worlds that just keeps going and going. It's very robust, Radiance Layer. And like I said, I feel like Radiance Layer comes at the end of the game's 3rd act, assuming this has a 4-act structure, not including post-game content and DLC, which kind of serves as like an extended epilogue and postscript. But Radiance Layer is a turning point in the game where we meet the very last Elder, we learn the last Bonanza form, and this is where I think the status quo of the game's plot and structure for the past 11 worlds, it really starts to upend. Things get resolved, lingering plot threads get tied up, and everything is kind of building up towards that final push towards the planet core. So, like, going into Radiance Layer, this is the point where we didn't know anything, right? Nothing in the pre-release hype cycle, nothing from Nintendo's Donkey Kong Bananza Direct and all the accompanying materials, nothing about that included the Radiance Layer. This is the point. Once we get past Racing Layer, I don't think we saw any glimpses beyond a cutscene or two that kind of tie into Radiance Layer that I won't discuss yet. But as far as the world itself, we were in the dark, which is fitting because Radiance Layer's theme is light and darkness, and also artisan snakes that harness the power of the light to dispel the dark. And yeah, like jumping in, like going through the sinkhole from Racing Layer, you know, you're all jazzed from this reunion with Diddy and Dixie and trying to come to terms with the term Rambies. And you drop down into a place called Shedlight Cave. And all of the names of the various locations in Radiance Layer are named after snakes in some form or fashion. So Shedlight Cave, like it's not immediately apparent. You think like, oh, shed, like where you might keep garden tools. But no, it's referring to them, you know, shedding their skin. But this is a very small starting area where you get accustomed to some of the new baddies and mechanics that you will encounter in Radiance Layer and how you will need to use light to defeat them. In this case, just shafts of light coming down from above. So it feels a little bit more fraught here, and you're like, oh no, you know, this is going to be a world full of danger and luring enemies from the darkness into the light. It's not that intense once you get down to Sublayer 1201, but this is a good introductory and kind of setting the stage. It's also a very satisfying area to strip completely clean using the Elephant Bonanza. I don't know if you like to do that, Joy.
Yeah, I was doing that to try to get maps to finish up the layer.
Yeah. I would sometimes come up to Sublayer 1200 to just grind for gold, Benandium gems, although I found a better way to grind for Benandium gems that was a little bit more infinitely renewable in this world, which we'll get to a little bit. But I like to max out some smashing stats. And as I've shared quite a bit on this podcast throughout this sub-series of Bonanza episodes, I like to at least max out 3 smashing stats in every world before I move on, even the smallest worlds. And so for Radiance Layer, this is where I really started to get self-indulgent with my smashing stats, just because you're getting towards the end of the game and there were some terrains that I hadn't ever maxed out. And I was like, you know, now would be a good time to try to max out this type of terrain just to say I did it once. So in this occasion, it was concrete. I hadn't maxed out any concrete stats in any world to this point, and there are these big concrete pillars throughout a couple of these sublayers in Radiance Layer, and so, yeah, it would just be every so often I would just come back up and knock out these columns, these big concrete pillars here to, you know, slowly ebb up my smashing stats. Why? I don't know. I don't know why my brain is the way it is, but it makes me happy. It satisfies me, so I did that.
Yeah, I definitely loved like the mechanic of this whole layer where we're dealing with light in very different ways, and I loved how it, like on this layer you kind of just introduced to like having light from the ceiling, and then it gets, you know, they explore that concept in many different ways throughout the whole layer.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, Bonanza is always on point, generally, with its mechanics and how it's... I mean, this is, Nintendo EPD, I know, but being a Donkey Kong brained freak that I am, this is really the first time I've appreciated it because they're speaking on my level. They're speaking in the term of Donkey Kong nonsense. So I'm like, oh, I get it now. I get why people sing the praises of Nintendo. But yeah, like it's steadily building, and also you start off in complete darkness in this world, and it gradually gets more illuminated as you go through various means and mechanics and plot points. But you are introduced to your first snake in Shedlight Cave. Now, the snakes are the animal tribe of Radiance Layer, and they are, as I said, artisans. They craft light fixtures. But more importantly than that, they have also created synthetic suns. And this is the explanation I didn't think we were going to get. Why are there suns in the underground world? Why in some layers do we look up and we see a big flaming orb? Well, they were created by the snakes. And while not every layer has a synthetic sun, some have alternate light sources. This is the explanation for why there is a sun in, say, Resort Layer. And I wasn't expecting that. I just thought we were going to have to fanon away, it's just Benandium power that is lodged in the upper ceiling of this layers. No, they are synthetic suns created by the snakes. And in fact, we later learn through the Explorer tone that the underground world didn't always have light. It didn't always have these synthetic suns. So this is, a relative recent development in the lifetime of the Fractones, for example. But yeah, I can't believe how well considered the underground world is. And by the time you get to this world, it's clear they have thought of nearly everything. Every little quibble the detail-obsessed fan could have about this game and the world in which Donkey Kong and Pauline are falling through, it's answered. They've got an answer for it, and I just adore that because I don't have to do it then. I don't have to create these 40-minute plus lore videos where I try to come up with some shaky justification. It's done for us. I can worry about other things, higher concerns than why there are suns. So, love it. And I love the snakes. The snakes are great. They are all very ornately dressed, and they've got, lantern hats that almost look like fezzes, not to conjure up the spirit of Matt Smith's Doctor anymore on this episode. But, I don't know, they almost read as vaguely like Turkish or Ottoman Empire era. I don't know, just the way they dress, and they're very almost scientifically minded. So it brought to mind kind of that area of the world from centuries ago. But I'm not really sure if there's supposed to be a one-to-one correlation with any human culture, past or present, with any of these animal species. Obviously you can make that comparison with the salvager monkeys. But I think it gets a little bit more nebulous when you get to the elephants. There are different theories about what the elephants might be representing, but it's I don't know. I think there are influences here or there, but it's more of a grab bag than it is a direct inspiration. But yeah, what did you think about the snakes in this world? Their portrayal, their personalities?
I found it so fascinating that we actually got an explanation for the suns and everything, and it's the snakes are also very cute. I have to say, I think they're my favorite animals in this game, just because they're so adorable. And then you high five one, and then it winks at you and jumps around, and it's so good.
Yeah. I really noticed that the clothing would fly off the characters when you high five them with the elephants because they're so large. And they're so like they're wearing such billowing clothes that when you high five them, it's very clear that you have undressed them at the same time. So by this point, I was high fiving everybody just to see what they look like in a state of undress. Not that I'm a pervert or anything. It's just, you know, I'm fascinated. Like, what do they have going on under there? Not that I'm a pervert or anything. Let me clarify. Like, what clothing, what undergarments they have on. I want to see like every little detail in this game. And so, yeah, they wear like tube pajamas underneath their highly detailed clothing. And yeah, it's fun to high five something that cannot possibly high five you back because they have no arms. You're just smacking a tube. And I don't know. I feel like Donkey Kong should feel bad about it, but Pauline is always very enthused when you do it. And she says, whoops, like, you knew that was going to happen, Pauline. You know every time that's going to happen. Don't play dumb.
I also like that there's two different colors of snakes as well, because there's the bright green ones and then there's the gray ones.
Yeah.
First layer is just the bright green ones, and then you meet the gray ones in the second layer.
Yeah. You know, I liked that they didn't obviously look like Radley either. You know, like Radley does come up in some form in this world, but it's nice to have a design that doesn't hew so closely after the most famous Donkey Kong snake. And, you know, I think, you know, they've done a good job. Like, the elephants don't necessarily read as Ellie, and, you know, the ostriches might read a little bit more as Espresso, but you know, I think it's kind of hard to do a different ostrich design when Espresso is just ostrich. I mean, that is ostrich in tennis shoes, right? So, like, it is interesting to see how they can do a Donkey Kong styled snake that isn't the Donkey Kong styled snake we all think of. So yeah, I was very happy about that. But these snakes, beyond the synthetic sun, they also create the light fixtures we see in the underground world. For example, the light fixtures we saw in the freezer layer, the little ice cream cone lights that are around, they were designed by the snakes. And as you explore Radiance Layer, you will see not only those light fixtures, but you'll see sketches and blueprints for those fixtures, like, hanging up, which I thought was just a wonderful detail, just a great little touch. Just so much detail if you stop and appreciate it in this world.
And I didn't even notice until I was going back through it the other day that you also just find, like, crates full of, like, the lights from different worlds. There was even the forest layer egg-shaped ones.
Yeah.
And there's also one crate with stuff that is not from... It's from a next layer that we're not at yet.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. A lot of foreshadowing in this world for both, like, stuff we're going to see later on and also plot points. And I guess that is appropriate that you foreshadow in a world that deals with shadows and dispelling them. But it's also worth pointing out, once again, fractones also live in Radiance Layer, and some of them, I originally had on my show notes, they've adopted their fursona as snakes, but I guess it would be a scale sona in this case. I don't know the terminology if you're, like, into reptiles, but yeah, they take on the shape of snakes with little tongues perpetually sticking out. I just love that detail about fractones, that they can just say, like, yes, I am a fractone, but I have decided to live my life as a snake, and they are just accepted by the other snakes, or in the case of Forest Layer, ostriches, or Freezer Layer zebras. It's just a really cool detail, and I love the themes of acceptance and not being so cloistered that Bonanza brings up with these underground communities. I guess, you know, initially you were in Lagoon Layer and the Salvager monkeys were very xenophobic, but once you get past there, it really starts to become more of a community, which will become a theme even more as you progress downwards. But yeah, I knew once I got here, I was like, okay, this is the final Bonanza form then. This is where we're going to learn it. It's going to be Snake that makes sense. Like Cameron brought up on the last episode that it seems like the Bonanza conceit might have started with his team when they were discussing how to utilize animal buddies, and they eventually like drifted away from animal buddies, but a lot of that DNA is still in here, and you can see that correlation with a lot of the Bonanza forms, like matching up classic Donkey Kong animal buddies, minus like the Kong form, which is just Donkey Kong on steroids, and Zebra form, discounting Zigman the zebra from off of Donkey Kong Country Returns, but you never got to ride on Zigmund. But yeah, this is clearly patterned after Radley, and I just assumed, oh yeah, this is going to be a springy jump Bonanza, and can't wait to see if I'm right, but I'm pretty sure I'm right. So let's go down to Sublayer 1201 and, see if the Elder is down here, and sure enough, that is where the Elder kept courts. So dropping down into 1201, which is the first truly expansive sublayer in this world, and you're still in an underground cavern. You're still kind of in the dark, but there's a lot more light to be had in Sublayer 1201 because this is where they introduce the big new terrain type that comes into play in Radiance Layer, Glowstone. Glowstone, which looks like kryptonite. It looks like it would be lethal to Superman, or, kryptonite is also lethal to humans in long enough exposure. Lex Luthor got cancer in the 90s. But
yeah,
he had to clone a new body for himself and fake his death, and then he posed as his Australian son for a few years. It's my favorite fact about Lex Luthor. Anyway, the Glowstone, you pick it up and you can carry it around, and it's a portable light source, but it will slowly dissolve in your hands once you pull it up from the big glowstone vein or wherever it is lodged in the ground. And there is almost a river of glowstone running through Sublayer 1201. It's abundant here, and you can really have fun. Well, I mean, the first thing I did was max out my smashing stats for glowstone, because of course I did. But then after that, I really started implementing it and started using it to fight the new baddies of this layer. And there are 3 new baddie types that you will encounter, Voidco engineered animals that will attack you. The big ones are gluminoids and illuminoids. And these are otherwise indestructible scorpions that react to light or shade. And then, the gluminoids, you take glowstone over to them, or you lure them into a shaft of light, and they shrivel up. They shrivel up into brittle little rocks, which you can then destroy. Illuminoids are the opposite. They thrive in light, and you need to get them in shade to have them shrivel up. And these are comprised of new terrain types unto themselves, which shade ore and bright ore are what coat them. So those also come into play individually elsewhere in the game, but the big time, when you mostly encounter shade ore and bright ore, are on these scorpion baddies. I thought these were going to be a little bit tougher when I encountered them in Sublayer 1200, and I had to lure them into those shafts of light. But once you get the glowstone, it becomes really fun to antagonize them.
And they're just such fun fun enemies, especially once you start to realize that we have glowstone now, so now it's a lot simpler. And then they also use their ore a bit later in this world to tell you that it's literally indestructible if it's not in light.
Yeah.
Which works out really well for you for certain purposes.
Chocolate Milk Drinker in a live stream says, Hyle, I'm doing schoolwork right now, and you have successfully got me to write layer and other Bonanza terms onto my work. Thanks, Hyle.
Nice.
I appreciate you listening, Chocolate Milk Drinker, but I don't want to fail you. So maybe save this as a treat later. I don't want to disrupt your schoolwork. I feel bad now. I feel like I'm a bad influence. Maybe we can learn something. Maybe tell me what you're learning right now. Tell me what your schoolwork is, and I will try my best to incorporate it into the episode to try to reroute your brain. We'll see if that works. But, speaking of the Glowstone, there is a great spot in Sublayer 1201 that I exploited a great deal. This is where I farmed Benandium chips to my heart's content, because there's a spot downwards from the tunnel that leads to the Snake Elder, and it's like a bed of glowstone. And surrounding the bed, there are maybe 6 gluminoids, in pairs. And so you can run down, pick up a chunk of glowstone, run over to 2 gluminoids, and whack them. And then you will get 2 Benandium chips from each gluminoid. And then you go over to the next pair, the other way, and then you go over to the next pair. And then by the time you come back, the other gluminoids have respawned. So you just keep bouncing back and forth, and you can just do that all day and get as many Benandium chips as you want. So this is where I really beefed up my Benandium chip inventory, so I never had to worry about running out again. I probably did this for 3 to 4 hours and had a great time. It's so satisfying. One, just watching that glowstone slowly dissolve in Donkey Kong's hands, but also just watching the gluminoids shrivel up and then breaking them. When they shrivel up, it almost looks like a sweet tart. It almost looks like some sort of candy you would eat as a child. And just then watch as they get crushed by Donkey Kong. So yeah, part of my 150 hours so far spent in Bonanza was just bouncing around Sublayer 1201, bashing scorpions.
You've become a bully to the scorpions.
To be fair, they are genetically engineered monsters there to kill Donkey Kong, so I didn't feel so bad about it. They are an invasive species here in Radiance Layer, so it's not like Donkey Kong was chopping the heads off the snakes or anything. Then I would feel bad. But the only time I would feel bad vis-a-vis my interactions with the snakes would be when Donkey Kong would accidentally destroy their light fixtures. Unintentionally, but Donkey Kong would smash something in a distance, and then it would fly up and bounce down and also break this pile of light fixtures they were working on, and then I would just I'm sure that can be reset like all terrain. I'm just gonna sneak away to the nearest getaway and hide under my non-existent covers.
Another spot in this layer that I really liked is that right when you get into the layer, there's just a getaway right next to where you land, and then there's a tunnel behind that getaway that will then show you that you get to see your first artificial sun, and then there's an NPC there to explain it to you that the sun's turned off here. We need to figure out how to turn it back on. And then you can also see all of the snake buildings in the distance on the skybox and everything.
Yeah,
it's a neat way to it introduces you the idea before you actually get to an open area where you'll see all of that.
Yeah, it's very dark, and you can kind of make out the outlines of the architecture in the distance. But yeah, there is a lot of clever usage of getting peaks of sublayers beneath the one you're in currently. And yeah, it's like I said, this world is a slow build towards getting out of the darkness, both literally and metaphorically, and then back into the darkness at the very end, which is apropos. But the other big baddie that you first encounter in this world are the Trapantuloids. They are enormous crawling mechanical spiders that inside, like it's like almost a cage, and inside they'll usually have gold or something desirable, but you'll have to find a way to destroy them. Usually from the top, you can like smash through, be it a slab of concrete or something, which will then cause them to break down. But these terrified me when I first saw them, because I was like, what the hell is this?
Yeah. It definitely took me a while to figure out how you're supposed to fight them, too, because it's not really super obvious.
Yeah.
First time you meet one.
I guess, if you went back then with the Snake Bonanza and you were just jumping high, then it would be super, like, you'd be able to see the terrain on top. But yeah, it's at first it's very disarming when you see it, because it's just kind of reminds me of something from like science fiction or horror, just this big mechanical spider crawling towards you, and the size disparity, it's so much bigger than Donkey Kong, so it is just freaky at first. But you can see there's something inside, like be it gold or something that might be of value. So you're like, okay, there is a way to break through them. There is a way to destroy them. It's not something I just have to continually avoid. Let me try to figure this out. So yeah, I mean, again, very, very elegant design there. But yeah, those are the big three baddies. And the Gluminoids are the ones you'll encounter the most. Illuminoids, second most frequent. And then Trapantuloids are much more rare, and you'll usually just encounter one here or there. But and then I don't think they respawn either, at least to the frequency that the scorpions do. So
yeah.
As far as ambient ambient wildlife goes, nothing really new that I encountered in this world. I did see the lizards again from the canyon layer originally, but I didn't see any real new crystal critters running around. So unless I missed them, I mean, there are a lot of places to get lost in this sublayer, especially once you get down like 1204. There are just so many nooks and crannies to explore.
Yeah, I think the lizard's the only one I saw.
Okay.
Myself.
That makes me feel better that I didn't miss any, because as much time as I spent in this world, I really shouldn't be lacking for details.
Yeah.
But one animal that I immediately saw, as in it was the very first fossil I collected, and this is where the idea was planted in my brain to maybe invite you on this episode, Joy. The most common fossil in Radiance Layer, banana birds.
They're finally back.
Yeah.
All dead.
Well, I mean, at least 61 of them are dead from some point in the past. Banana birds, in my opinion, they are such an iconic part of the Donkey Kong series. If you are a Donkey Kong nerd, I'm not saying they are well known to the general populace or even like Nintendo fans who maybe don't give that much of a shit about Donkey Kong outside of him appearing in Mario Kart. But banana birds, if you are like really into Donkey Kong, I would say they are pretty much beloved. And because Donkey Kong Country 3 does not get referenced all that much, or at least hasn't gotten referenced all that much since 1997 or so, they've been virtually ignored since, Donkey Kong Country 3 was the de facto most recent major game in the series. They didn't even appear in Donkey Kong Land 3, not including the GBA remake of DKC 3. The first Donkey Konga was the only other time in which they've showed up. And that game also had Ellie in it as well, which I always took to mean that Namco must have played Donkey Kong Country 3 as one of the only 2 Donkey Kong games they played before making Donkey Konga, but I appreciated it nonetheless. But yeah, banana birds.
This kind of implies that banana birds are probably like an endangered species, because we know 61 of them are dead, and we only know of 20 of them that are alive.
Well, okay, so it raises some questions for sure, but, we don't know how old these banana bird fossils are. And for me, it might suggest that banana birds have existed long before the Queen's flock of children from Donkey Kong Country 3. Whether or not these are also children of the Queen, that, her children have temporary lives, or maybe the banana birds, the queen isn't immortal and there have been many banana bird queens over the years. We don't know, but it suggests a longer lineage to the banana birds than what we just see in Donkey Kong Country 3. So, yeah, I mean, I'm intrigued. Will we ever get answers for this? At this point, in the past, I would have said no, but who knows at this point? I mean, we're going to some pretty wild places with Donkey Kong lore with Bonanza that I didn't think we would. I didn't even think we would get banana birds referenced in a Donkey Kong game ever again. And here we go, 61 banana bird fossils throughout Radiance Layer. Blew me away. I was like, okay, well, maybe I won't invite the former Kiddy Kong Facts on this episode because it's tangentially related to Kiddy Kong. What really sealed the deal, though, was a fossil that we would uncover later on in this world, which I might want to save for when we get there. But the rare fossil in this layer, the one that exists in quantity of 10, is an army. The classic armadillo baddie of the Kremlin crew. And hasn't been seen, I believe, since Donkey Kong 64. In that case, the boss of Jungle Japes was Armadillo, but armies were so ubiquitous in the first year of the modern Donkey Kong series since Donkey Kong Country. They were everywhere in Donkey Kong Country, and then they were in Donkey Kong Land, and then they didn't show up in the sequels to either. And then they were in Conker's Pocket Tales. And then Donkey Kong 64 had the boss form. And then that was it. No more armies. I don't even... Did they show up in King of Swing? I don't recall them showing up in the Payon games.
I haven't really played those that much myself, so I don't know.
Yeah, you would if Kiddy Kong was in them.
Yeah. I definitely loved, though, that the description for the Armadillo one mentions that some of them had carried cannons. So you do get that reference to Armadillo there. Yeah. So the only description to not include a cute pun or allusion to the character name is under Armadillo. So let me read the first two descriptions. The one for Banana Bird and the one for Armadillo. No, so Banana Bird, they just call them Banana Birds. I guess there's no way to get around that, because up until this point, they're not calling them zingers in the fossil. It's just, preserved bug or whatever. And, they're calling naughties beavers, and they then include a little wink and a nod to the subspecies name, or in the case of the animal buddies, the animal buddy name. But for Banana Bird, it is just complete bullshit. It's just, there's no animal species that is actually equatable to a banana bird. So they just call them banana birds as the name. Yeah.
And it says small birds that had the coloration and possibly texture of a banana. They were trapped in crystals long ago. And, okay, so some of these descriptions, they're kind of having it both ways with the description, because they're, one, referring to the fact that these are things that have existed in Donkey Kong games of the past. But on the other hand, from a more in-universe perspective, they're also just fossilized remnants from long ago, in many cases longer than the games themselves. So this implies that banana birds have been trapped in crystals before Donkey Kong Country 3. Because, yeah, these are not, in my reading, these are not supposed to be the same banana birds from Donkey Kong Country 3. Like, they didn't all have a grisly ending. I mean, they might all be dead by now. Who knows? But I think these are, like, fossils that are from banana bird generations centuries ago, perhaps. But sometimes they do get fast and loose with the descriptions. And we kind of see that with Armadillo. It says, these critters rolled into balls to defend their turf. Some of them with military training simply carry cannons instead. So yeah, it's fun. They do mention military training, so I guess they didn't feel like they needed to work in the term army in there, especially because army is just derived from armadillo, so they probably thought it redundant.
As the one Donkey Kong fan whose favorite games are Donkey Kong Country 3 and DK64, these fossils are definitely for me.
And I love that they're not afraid to reference the full history in what amounts to a 2-sentence description. They don't mention Conker's Pocket Tales, which is understandable. Like, they don't have another line in there that says, oh yeah, and they once rolled into Conker the Squirrel on his birthday. But I still appreciate that they get in the reference, the classic reference to Donkey Kong Country, and then the Donkey Kong 64 reference, and actually equate the two. Like, that is a boss-sized army in DK64. So,
yeah,
it's nice to see, like, them get that right. In the live stream, Courtney has joined us, and Courtney says, banana birds are attracted to crystals like moths to a flame. Yeah, I could see that. I also think that, like, K. Rool obviously knew what he was doing with the banana birds in DKC3 when he trapped them, and so I guess, this is commonly known how to dispatch banana birds. When you have a banana bird infestation, you recite a magical incantation and imprison them in the nearest cavern. Just what you do.
Maybe what happened to all the fossils here is that they were trapped in the crystals, and then nobody was there to save them.
Oh,
so
yeah.
They eventually became fossils.
Oh, that's sad, but I could actually see that, especially given how many crystals exist in Radiance Layer.
It is true.
That is true. I mean, the snakes.
No one was
them.
here.
Yeah.
No one was here to play Simon Says with them, unfortunately.
No, nobody knew how to play Simon back then. It didn't exist. Milton Bradley hadn't made it yet, so I mean, they were just lost to time, lost to the sands as they slipped down through the Earth's crust over the many millennia. And while the snakes would eventually utilize the crystal to create sculptures and art installations, it was too late for the poor banana birds. So yes, the snakes are artisans, as we mentioned, and the snake elder is basically, in my show notes I wrote, and I actually wrote this down, this is one of the written notes I made while I was playing this, and we first met the snake elder, I wrote, if Banksy was a massive tube. That was my note. So yeah, the snake elder, you meet him, and he's got like a green baseball cap on, or maybe like a trucker hat, but it's got just a banana symbol on it. And it's, the snake elder says, Schwa! If it isn't the celebrities everyone's talking about. DK and Pauline, I believe. And all, like the snake elder and most of the snakes really like enunciate all the S's. So, the elders simply can't stop talking about you. I am the snake elder, obviously. And the rumors are true. I am a lighting artist of unsurpassed skill. And then, like the other elders, they go on to say, but my portfolio doesn't end there. I am skilled in the musical arts as well. A brilliant DJ, you might say. And so then Donkey Kong and Pauline talk to the Snake Elder, and, they asked, what do you seek? And you can choose the bananas or the planet core. And by this point in the story, I was always selecting the planet core, the banana core. I guess that would be appropriate too, but the planet core. And, then the Snake Elder is like, oh yeah, you want to get to the planet core? Well, you better learn my snake Bonanza. But oh no! The little Void Kong came through and broke up the ancient record. Go figure. It's not like this hasn't happened in nearly every world that has had one, but in this case, Void Kong has broken the ancient record into 4 pieces and then tossed them all into the Snake Elder's renowned art installations. Which, if I was Void, I would have just taken the record with me. Then Donkey Kong can't learn the Snake Bonanza, and then he's kind of stuck at some points. I don't know. I think I see why Void Company failed. Why ultimately they were not destined to succeed, because they always decided to just chuck the ancient record nearby. Had they just taken it with them, then it would have been much, much harder for Donkey Kong and Pauline to progress. Anyway, I do appreciate that the Snake Elder says, in terms of Void Kong, that Void Kong is uncultured and uncouth. Finally, the word uncouth has been spoken in a Donkey Kong game. I'm very happy about that. But, so retrieving the ancient records, there are 4 different art installations that you then have to go into in Sublayer 1201 to retrieve each quadrant of the smashed record. And I really, really appreciate this. This is, in my opinion, one of the most rare, ideas that the Bonanza team stumbled upon. And by that, I mean, these are all just very video gamey obstacle courses that have had some bullshit justification applied to it from an in-universe perspective. In this case, this is all high art, but they're all just video game nonsense. And I find this stuff to be legitimately funny. This is the kind of stuff I would always crack up about with Rare, and how they would find a way to justify a lot of tired, played out video game conventions, even played out back in the era Rare was, really making games with Nintendo. It was played out then, and they were hanging a lampshade on it, apropos of this world, once again. But yeah, the absurd justification for why these video game sequences exist. And if you actually stop to talk to the Snake Elder's assistant or apprentice, I think, you get little descriptions of the 4 different areas, art installations that Donkey Kong and Pauline have to go into. And it's the Pitch Dark Pit, no relation to Dark Pit from off of Super Smash Bros. 4. And the Pitch Dark Pit, the Sizzling Sun Bath,
Slithery Zipline, yes.
Slithery
Zipline and Sidewinder Slide.
Yes. So
the other 2.
Yeah, those are the 4, and I really love the descriptions of each, because again, this is where it became really funny for me. Just it's almost like poking fun at the high art world, because the way they justify all of these as art. And I am not somebody to say what is and what isn't art. It's all extremely subjective, but it does seem like it's just having fun with the concept of high art and the pretensions therein. So for the Pitch Dark Pit, the description is, when you talk to the Snake Apprentice, they say, and I am pulling up the screenshot here, the pitch dark pit is an exploration in darkness, and thus ignites one's respect for the light. When immersing yourself in the exhibit, a glowstone may reveal the deeper meaning. And I just, it's a dark cavern that you have to use. You have to carry a glowstone in and run around before it dissolves. But again, like, if it's not apparent, then you talk to them about the sizzling sun bath, and they will say, imagine a scalding pool filled with the essence of the synthetic sun. This is the molten heart of the sizzling sun bath. To immerse yourself in the exhibit, make your way around the precipice of the pool. Reflect on the importance of balance as you take care not to miss a step. It's a like molten pit, and you don't want to fall in it.
I find that one's so funny too, because like if you go in there, you can just pull out the elephant and just destroy the entire art exhibit, and you have to because there's a banana down there.
There is. They weren't counting on the elephant elder to ruin the art of the snake elder, but that is the danger one runs into when different cultures may not understand the meaning of your art. So, like I said, it's all subjective. For the slithery zip line, they say, as the name suggests, it is a zip line. And also a sweeping journey through light and dark. Very inspired. We usually provide a slippery iron chunk to those who want to experience the exhibit. Alas, we are out of stock. I suggest you acquire a scorpion chunk, which can be extremely hard, like slippery iron. So these are just the energy zip lines that we saw in Tempest Layer. And you have to zip line over, and you have to actually procure it from a scorpion, one of the gluminoids. So, it's
just a fun, it's just a fun puzzle to like have to use a gluminoid and then make sure you don't go too close to the light on the way over. Like it's a fun little gimmick there, and they play with that a couple times in the Radiance Layer.
Yeah, it is just a fun use of terrain that can be hostile to you if you don't get it right. So, my favorite, though, was the Sidewinder slide. And this was a big pillar that, like, Donkey Kong and Pauline have to slide down. It is slippery. And as they explain, it's an enormous exhibit. It calls to mind a snake's tail. But one must touch the sleek scales to truly experience it. Simply grab the surface and slowly slide down. Think upon the symbolism as you go deeper and deeper still. Once your journey concludes, use the barrel cannon to return. Yes, think upon the symbolism. What symbolism might that be? No, think upon it. Just think upon it. Don't. It's very deep because you're going deep. There's symbolism, you see. Symbolism. It's such nonsense, but it's so funny to me. And like I said, it's the most rare-like humor I think I encountered in Bonanza up until this point. It's just so tongue-in-cheek. It's so transparently bullshit that I was loving every bit of. This is really where I really started to feel the Banjo-Kazooie influence. Because even more than Donkey Kong, this is the kind of stuff you would see in a Banjo-Kazooie game, or even a Conker game, like Bad Fur Day to an extent. I'm not just saying Conker because of the army fossils, but like just the knowingly taking the piss out of video games.
It would have to suck to slide down this thing, though, because it looks like it's wet when you're grabbing it. So Donkey Kong probably has like goop in all of his fur.
It's like
probably
slippery.
Not fun to clean out.
It's like slippery iron. Yeah, that's like weeping. And of course, there's like little like electrified bits of it, and you have to just like shimmy your way down it. And I found it enjoyable, and you're also like getting you can see glimpses of the sublayer below through the windows as you go down. So something to keep in mind if you want to experience it again. But you get all 4 ancient record pieces, you put it together, and you finally unlock the last Bonanza in the game. I don't think that's a spoiler because you can count them out on the skill tree, but this is the Snake Bonanza. And, I like the Snake Bonanza. It's probably my 3rd most used Bonanza after Kong and Elephant, respectively. But it's up there. It's more situational, like Ostrich Bonanza, and I think the most situational is Zebra Bonanza. But it's all in your particular play style as well. I know lots of people just spam the Ostrich Bonanza, whereas I don't use it all that much, unless I have to. But, Jem in a live stream says it's interesting seeing what order everyone rates the banana forms in. I think it's all down to play style. Like, I don't know about you, Joy. Like, where do you put the Snake Bonanza in terms of the hierarchy?
Personally, I was always struggling to use the Snake Bonanza properly because it's just you have to jump and then try to use the glare to freeze everything and then try to jump again. I was always struggling to do a lot of the puzzles with it, so I wasn't a big fan of it. My immediate thought was that he's so ugly.
Oh,
very ugly.
I love the way Donkey Kong looks as a snake. It feels like the closest we've ever come to seeing what Donkey Kong would look like as a Kremling, honestly. Like, I think this is the first time, we would see Donkey Kong as anything cold-blooded. So this is the only, I mean, he's an ostrich. I was going to say he's non-mammalian, but we did see him in bird form, which is kind of weird. But yeah, this is the first time we've seen him as a reptile, which brings him closest to, a Kremling, his natural antagonist. And so it's weird, especially when you see the little necktie still dangling from him. But there is that recognizable brow that's being communicated through the Snake Bonanza. So, for me, it did take some time to get the hang out of the jumps and especially the glare ability, which allows Donkey Kong, you're not really slowing down time. I think of it as like Donkey Kong perceiving time much slower and thus able to have a much faster reaction time to everything. But it does take some time getting used to employing both to your benefit. And there are puzzles throughout Radiance Layer where you can use glare to your ability. And it also comes into play if you want to use it. Because, a lot of these Bonanza abilities, aside from the 1 or 2 times where the game forces your hand, it's all really just down to your personal preference and play style. So there are people who might use Snake Bonanza quite a bit, and then there are other people who will only break it out when absolutely necessary. Like I said, it's probably middle of the pack for me. And I did find glare did come in handy a couple times later on in the game. And I'd be like, why don't I try to use glare here and see what happens? Oh, that works. But yeah, it's not as go-to as Kong or Elephant, but I definitely used it more than even Ostrich Bonanza.
Personally, I didn't really use the Bonanzas all that much because I'm just the type of person that will hoard everything I have in games. And even though you get your Bonanza back very quickly, I was always thinking well, what if I need it later? So I just never really used them, except for the specific puzzles that needed it.
By this point, I was wearing the gold necktie for Donkey Kong, so it would replenish my Bananergy, much faster by collecting gold. So I would always try to have a Bonanza at the ready. As soon as I depleted my Bonanza, I would always make sure my Bananergy was refilled, so I could then have the Bonanza at beck and call. So, I mean, again, I also play much more thoroughly than pretty much anybody, where I'm perfectly happy and content to grind for Benandium gems for 4 hours, bashing glowstones over the head of gluminoids. So, I am very like meticulous in my play style, and I don't leave anything to chance if I can avoid it. But Jeff, our good friend Jeff, DK Vine staffer and Cloaca expert, pointed out something very interesting to me, because there was something about unlocking the last Bonanza form that did legitimately bother me, and I wasn't sure if there was something broken on my end when it happened. And it took Jeff to explain to me why they did this. And Jeff very secretly has the mind of a brilliant game designer. And Jeff brought this to light, and I was like, you're absolutely right. That's why they did that. I feel like a fool for ever being bothered by this, but the order of the Bonanzas on the HUD are not in the order in which you unlock them. Snake is situated before Elephant. And like I said, that did bug me until Jeff pointed out that it makes switching between Bonanza forms that complement each other much easier. So just like you will probably want to use the Kong and Zebra Bonanzas together to exploit strength and speed, you will want to use the Ostrich and Snake Bonanza forms together to get greater heights, which you can then flutter over to. And that broke my chronological brain. That broke my obsessive compulsive desire to order everything in a very like linear fashion. And once I saw that, and I realized the game wants you to switch between snake and ostrich forms, and between Kong and zebra forms. And elephant is kind of the odd one out, but I suppose, there might be some need to switch between elephant and Kong. You can do that easily as well. And so from that point on, I started doing that more. I was like, okay, yeah, I will use snake and ostrich in conjunction with each other. And indeed, there are certain Benandium gems that you have to get by using both.
Yeah, I know speedrunners have definitely been using ostrich and snake a lot to just skip a lot of stuff.
Which,
because you can get very high up and then you can just glide away.
Don't misinterpret my endorsement of this as an endorsement of skipping over any bit of Donkey Kong Bananza. You should spend 4 hours in Sublayer 1201 farming Benandium chips. You should. But, if you want to skip over any part of this brilliant game, sure, whatever.
I also think that, it kind of makes it a bit fascinating because, the way... Something I really like about Bonanza is how, the rare 3D collectathons were always never really about the platforming all that much, and I feel like they were more adventure games than they were platformers, and then Bonanza does a similar thing where, it's a platformer, but again, it's not really that much about the platforming. It's definitely more terrain destruction before platforming, and then... Ostrich and Snake kind of helps you skip a lot of the platforming segments if you want to just have a quick way to get past them.
But the platforming is there if you want to play that way. I think Bonanza complements so many different play styles. And by this point in the game, I'm so comfortable with the mechanics, and I'm roll jumping just like Donkey Kong roll jumps in a Donkey Kong Country game. And I'm clinging on the side of walls and climbing up and scurrying about and turf surfing and chunk jumping. And yes, also using Bonanza forms, but I'm also... Being the way I play, I'm not using Bonanza forms unless absolutely necessary to achieve an objective. So, maybe I'll go back and strip the terrain clean with the Elephant Bonanza, but that won't be my first go-to when I'm exploring an area. I will maybe gingerly dig for a bit if there's somewhere I have to be. So, I definitely got my fill of nearly every play style, but generally speaking, I'm a platformer fan at heart, and so that would be how I would approach Bonanza first and foremost, and then only mix it up as I get more comfortable and familiar with each world.
Yeah.
Yeah, Naggy Boy or Nagy Boy in our live stream says, I assume they did it for going snake jump into ostrich glide, well designed, EPD8. And Martro says, my brain can't even comprehend being able to speedrun games. Maybe I just need to get better at them, though. I mean, for me, games are an escape. If I want to speedrun anything, it's real life. So I'm not disparaging speedrunners. Please keep in mind, whenever I say tisk tisk for speedrunning Bonanza, it's a bit. It's not me actually admonishing anybody for enjoying the game how they want to enjoy it or even approach it, but I am the kind of person who treats the Donkey Kong series as a Bible of sorts. Not literally, but, you know, like, it is just such a thing for me to celebrate, and part of that is just absorbing every minute detail in it, and you can't do that if you skip over it.
I think Bonanza it really lends itself to just, you can play it however you want.
Yeah.
Even if there's an obvious intended solution for a lot of stuff, but it definitely pulls from other Nintendo games of late where we just give you the tools to do it a different way if you want to.
And I think that's why it's resonating with so many people, because you can approach it from your preferred style. So that's why so many people, it's reading like an authentic Donkey Kong game, because we are playing it like a Donkey Kong Country game, or like we imagine 3D Donkey Kong would feel like, you know. No slight intended towards Donkey Kong 64. It's just Donkey Kong 64 didn't really control like a Donkey Kong Country game a lot of times. So yeah, it is just such a well-considered game all around. But getting back to the Snake Bonanza, or rather, after Donkey Kong learns the Snake Bonanza, I love whenever he learns a Bonanza and he comes out of the Elder's psychedelic training area, and Donkey Kong, like, wakes, like, it actually, like, takes everything out of Donkey Kong, and so he's passed out on the ground, and Pauline has to wake him up. It's just such a great detail, because, the whole thing of, like, the first time your body transforms into this wild new shape, you know, like, that would, I imagine, be like the most intense workout you've ever had, and would probably deplete you completely, where you would have to nap for the rest of the day.
And I think it just lets you have like a little moment with Pauline and DK bonding a little bit.
Yeah,
where she's waking him up.
To bring it to something near and dear to your heart, it's like when a doctor regenerates in Doctor Who. A lot of times they'll spend the entire episode either like passed out or like just delirious from the new rush of brain chemistry that happens when, you know, you go from the super irritating Matt Smith to the pretty much enjoyably cantankerous Peter Capaldi. Donkey Kong wakes up, and Pauline, and I bring this up because this is actually relevant for the narrative. Pauline says, "We did it, DK. You got the Snake Bonanza. If we keep this up, we'll definitely get to the Benandium root and the planet core." And then the Snake Elder, whatever passes for ears, the Snake Elder is wearing headphones, like big, like Beats or whatever, and so I assume the snakes have some hearing similar to ear. I've never really thought about it, but
I wouldn't know.
Yeah, the Snake Elder says, "Schwa, how enlightened of you to know about the Benandium roots. Now, let me let you in on a little secret. Do you know what that shiny thing there is?" And you see one of the gold root tendrils that have been part of the game and part of the like environments from the start. And the Snake Elder points it out, and Pauline says, "A golden root?" And the Snake Elder says, "That golden root is a part of the Benandium root itself. It is said that roots like this come from the planet core where the Benandium root resides. It is also said that some of these roots grow all the way up to the surface." And Pauline is impressed. She says, "Whoa, So all of the gold around here comes from the Benandium root? And the Snake Elder says, yes, but sadly, I haven't seen a single new root around here in some time. My sophisticated intuition tells me something has gone sideways. Pauline, worried, says, that doesn't sound good. You worry, DK? Well, we don't have a choice. We're going no matter what. The Snake Elder says, schwa! I just love the schwa. It's almost as fun as the zebra's bra. But schwa, you are the curators of your own future. May the sun light the path you slither upon. So a little bit of foreshadowing there, a little bit of further context. I think Bonanza does such a great job of slowly doling out relevant plot information where it doesn't overwhelm you. You don't have this big 20-minute plot exposition dump, but you get little bits of context as you go on related to the planet core and then the Benandium roots. And while we knew from the pop-up loading screen messages that the gold in the underground world is all derived of the same material as the Benandium gems and the Benandium chips, and it's all related to the Benandium roots. Here it's all spelled out, but we get the more pressing news that something is inhibiting the growth of the Benandium root. There is a crisis afoot within the laws of nature. Something is wrong near the planet core. What could that be? I
love how there's so much little world building details in this as well. Where all the gold is from the Benandium root, which is it's definitely very different from how they approach Mario games, where Mario games are definitely a lot less concerned about all these little details.
Yeah, having
which is fine. It's just a different way of making games.
Yeah, having played Odyssey recently, or let me reframe, having played through the Metro Kingdom in Odyssey recently, I would say that game does a good job of giving you greater context for each kingdom and some of the logic and world building. And I would say modern Nintendo has definitely gotten away from what classic Nintendo would do and approach these things with. There's a lot more fun with details and lore even. But yeah. Bonanza, and maybe it's just because I'm so much more invested in Bonanza because it is a 3D Donkey Kong game, but Bonanza does such a good job of considering almost every aspect of the underground world and the tribes that live in the underground world, including the Fractones. And there's just so much, and not all of it is spelled out, and some of it doesn't need to be spelled out. Some of it is just my favorite stuff in the DKU, just inferred from paying attention, and you can connect the dots that way. But there is just a lot of careful world building up to why there are suns in some of the underground layers. It's because they are created by the snakes. And God, when we saw that, it's funny because I had just been saying, on the Kongversation, my own theories about the sun before I'd even gotten here. And so having it then explained and having it be given a true canonical reason, I wasn't expecting it. I thought it was just going to be one of those things we as the fans would have to piece together and kind of just content ourselves with. But Bonanza is always one step ahead of the fans playing it. And that really becomes clear the deeper you get into the game. All of the concerns, all of the questions you might have, they're going to address them. Which, again, wasn't expecting. Back when just this idea of Nintendo EPD doing the next Donkey Kong game was just a little piece of information we had without any other context. I was expecting something that would be fun to play, but would make me go light on the stuff that made me a Donkey Kong fan to begin with, the stuff that Rare really pioneered on Nintendo consoles back in the day. But now it's just part of Nintendo's own philosophy, or at least this team's philosophy. It's great. I mean, I know people have always said, like, hey, Hyle, you should play Splatoon because they really do the stuff you love. And my problem is I'm just not interested in the world of Splatoon. I can respect it. It just holds no interest for me personally. But this is like catnip to me.
They just have to put Donkey Kong in the next Splatoon game.
But even then like, yeah, you can put Donkey Kong in something and I'll have to cover it for DK Vine. But am I invested in it? Not on the large level that I'm invested in this. Not in the level that I'm invested in the underground world at this point. Like, I love this conceit of the underground world and how it just so effortlessly conjoins with everything in past Donkey Kong games. It just feels like such a natural extension of Donkey Kong's world. And but by this point in the story, by this point in the game, I am just hanging on every word. And I'm like, this is the point in the game where I wanted to slow down because I realized I was having such a good time playing Bonanza. I did not want Bonanza to end. And people were getting so pissed off at me because they really wanted me to get to the game's end. And I'm just like, I'm having too much fun. I'm getting too much enjoyment out of Bonanza in what's otherwise a very shitty time for real life, for the real world. I want to escape, and this game is not only providing me an escape, it's providing me escape into Donkey Kong's world, my favorite fictional getaway. So, yeah, I'm really just milking this game for all it's worth at this point, because the game is not just meeting my expectations, but far and away exceeding them.
And on this layer, there was also one of the NPCs that was near the Warp Gong had a dialogue where they mentioned that the suns are all powered by the Benandium gems as well.
Yes.
Which kind of dials back to, in New Donk City, you see power moons being harvested for their power. Mm-hmm. But it also gives you an explanation as to how these suns work.
And it's also nice because, Benandium was my theory about the suns to begin with, but I just thought, maybe there's just a wad of Benandium gems lodged up there and they're all just irradiating this immense heat. But it's all very deliberate. There's actually an intelligence and a purpose behind it. In this case, the cool fez-wearing snakes.
Yep.
So, anyway, you have the Snake Bonanza. You can progress. You can jump up to where the sinkhole is and then dive down into Sublayer 1202, which is where you turn the synthetic sun back on. So you drop down. We've got little glimpses of the exterior areas, if you want to call it that, of this world, from the point you mentioned near the getaway, down in 1201, and also when you're sliding down the art installation. But here you're actually outside, and they're like, hey, you got to get to the tower over there, you got to slither to the top floor to restart the synthetic sun. And there's a lot more details in this sublayer. We're not going to go into everything, like every Benandium gem, every little area, but we're just going to touch upon the most relevant areas, because this is a large world. So not only could we not do it justice, but also that would make this episode 5 hours or more, and we'd have to save the first 5-hour episode towards the game's end. So you climb the tower, and then what are you greeted by inside but rolling oil drums, like flaming oil drums. And I was like, oh God, they're doing a direct Donkey Kong arcade homage here. And if you look closely at the blue oil drums that are bouncing down, rather than having the word oil written on them in English, it's written in the banana glyph language. So just that little consideration. This game is so detail oriented, and most people will never stop and try to get a screenshot of these damn oil drums dropping down to verify that the word oil is then written in the banana glyph language. Like, for one, nobody's going to translate it, but two, nobody's ever going to really notice that detail except for maybe 100 some people worldwide maybe will ever do this. God, I love this game.
Yeah, and then it also has dangerous written under it in smaller glyphs.
Right. So
it is funny that they bother to do that, considering like the camera is locked in a 2D segment for most of the time you see them.
Yeah, you can't even swing the camera around like to really you have to like wait until the oil drum rolls in such a way that you can see every banana glyph on there. It's so great. God. All right. Anyway, you keep climbing, and I like there's one bit where you're towards the top of the tower, and Void has put his propaganda posters all around. And by this point in the story, he started putting up the Surrender the Root poster, which has the I guess what's supposed to be the Benandium root on there, a big golden dome on top. And one of these snakes is looking at the poster and says, "Surrender the root," all confused. Just in case you, the player, are just trying to speed run through this and haven't really taken stock of the posters. Like, this is a character actually calling out and referencing the poster, I believe, for the first time, or this specific poster for the first time. Which I'm glad the game does. I'm glad the game is really building up the idea of the Benandium root at this point.
They want to make sure you can't just totally ignore the plot.
And without getting into spoilers, there is a point even later in the game where they just drop all pretenses and they force the camera to swing in and lock in on the poster and have the characters have a chat about it. But yes, they are doing some seed planting here. So anyway, you restart the sun. Woohoo, the sun is back. It's got this great yellowish green shimmering quality to it, which, like implies heat, but also has this kind of artifice to it at the same time. Not to go into color theory again, because I can't do it near the justice that our friend Mitchell can, but this game, like just the color scheme of this game, it's so well thought out. Like every layer has a specific tone to it, a specific warmness or coldness, or just I don't know. Like, again, I don't have the brain to discuss color theory, but I know that my brain likes it. I know that, what this synthetic sun confers to me is that while this is very, very hot, and in fact we will see a desert in just a little bit, there's also just this, it brings to mind the glowstones that we had just been introduced to, and it brings to mind then just that these are synthetic, that this is not the sun on the surface, this is something wholly concocted by the snakes. And even if you're not stopping and considering all these careful plot points, your subconscious is doing the work for you just by seeing the color of the sky.
Yeah.
So, speaking of rolling oil drums, this is where, or around this area is where we have a challenge course that gives us the final 2D challenge course of the game. 4 of 4. So before this, we had Nostalgia Country, the game's homage to jungle hijinks from the original Donkey Kong Country. We had Bramble Country, the game's homage to Bramble Blast and Bramble Scramble from off of Donkey Kong Country 2. And we had Minecart Country, the game's homage to Minecart Carnage from Donkey Kong Country. Here we have Arcade Country. So, okay, I admit, don't yell at me, Jem. I know you're listening. I was a bit bummed when this popped up because I was like, oh no, the last 2D challenge course isn't a Donkey Kong Country homage. It's an arcade homage, and therefore my interest in it is halved. But I did kind of know this was coming because I remembered the bit from the Donkey Kong Bananza Direct. And it was like, okay, you know what? They've earned it. You know, they've earned the arcade homage. And it's funny, though, Arcade Country seems like such an oxymoron. It's such a weird conjoining of two very distinct eras of Donkey Kong into one. But this is something Bonanza's really good at. This is something that I have to give them their props for. And I'm going to use this word again that I've been using in lots of these episodes. But Bonanza really does a good job at harmonizing all of the disparate eras of Donkey Kong and finding a way to make them all not just coexist in this like fragile coalition, this fragile alliance, but also like makes them complement each other in a way that I never thought would be possible. So yes, we have this challenge course called Arcade Country where Donkey Kong is scaling the girders and avoiding oil drums rolling down. And yeah, I really like this. Plus the music of Arcade Country, which is a remix of the, Donkey Kong 81 music. It's a bop. I love this music.
Yeah, this was an interesting little challenge course. I am certainly a bit salty that Donkey Kong Country 3 didn't get one of these courses.
And I knew you would be, and honestly, I was too, because I was hoping we would get a Donkey Kong Country 3 homage. I feel like I understand why they did Minecart Country. I understand, want to get that in there, especially, hey, theme park, gotta promote the theme park, gotta promote the roller coaster, and minecarts do come into play in Bonanza, so it makes sense. But at the same time, like having two taken from the original Donkey Kong Country and none taken from Donkey Kong Country 3, it would have been nice to have something from Country 3 in there. But all right, you know what? I'll give them Arcade Country because one, the game does a great job of having the arcade era and the rare era, and to a lesser extent, the retro era, all kind of mesh together to build the current era, the Bonanza era, or whatever we end up calling it. It's just a nice kind of ceasing of the hostilities between the different Donkey Kong fandom generations. And like I said, I really like the remix from here. It's more, I think this is an original version versus just taking, pretty much taking the song as is and just putting it in. It's something that I would then play in the getaways whenever Cranky was nearby, just to placate him. I'd be like, all right, here you go, old man. Here's something I know you'll appreciate, something from your youth. So, yeah. I did like the overall aesthetic of this though. Like they almost have this kind of spacey aesthetic, this like skyline in the background. It just very, I don't know. It read as very arcadey to me, like very 1980s arcade.
It's funny just to think in hindsight how all the discourse around Bonanza before it came out was like it would just ignore all of Donkey Kong's history, and then just literally every part of Donkey Kong's history is here in some form or another. And
I was arguing against that. Anybody who was listening to those episodes pre-release, how hard I went towards that idea. I'm not even just talking about the Kotaku article, but just the nihilism that sprang up. And a lot of it wasn't internal. A lot of it wasn't from Donkey Kong fandom. It was coming at people thinking they were having a laugh at the expense of Donkey Kong fandom. Like, haha, your series is in shambles. Fuck you. That's what you get. And one, I was like, rude. Two, I was like, no, it isn't. What are you talking about? Like, it's clear that there's a story being told here. So just because you are choosing to have the object permanence of a newborn doesn't mean that that's actually what's happening in Donkey Kong Bananza. It's clear there are references to the past, and Donkey Kong Bananza is a continuation. And yeah, I mean, you know what? Like, I'm a country kid. I got into all of this and I became a diehard lifelong fan because of Donkey Kong Country. But the fact that we can now hold up the arcade era as part of that history, preceding Donkey Kong Country, which precedes the buyout era, which precedes the retro era, which precedes Bonanza, and it's all just part of a big story. I never thought we would get here. I never thought they would find that perfect balance and find a way to celebrate it all in a way that pleases every generation of fan. I know, like, there will be some people out there who Bonanza didn't do it for. I haven't personally spoken with those people. I know they exist, but yeah, speaking as a diehard Donkey Kong fan for almost 31 years, Bonanza gets it right.
And if we want to, we could pretend Arcade Country is a Donkey Kong 64 level. If you want to say
yeah,
that.
if you want. If
it is in there.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. Yeah. It was the most accurate recreation of the arcade Donkey Kong that was playable on a Nintendo console until they put the arcade Donkey Kong on the Switch.
And DK64 was the first time that arcade Donkey Kong rewarded you with a banana.
Yeah,
so
that's true.
You know, it does tie in.
Kind of, yeah. In that case, it was a golden banana. These are Benandium gems. Very different. Well, not that different, but functionally not that different, but very different in the lore. Anyway, so
yeah.
There is a boss battle at the end of Sublayer 1202. It's not the last boss battle in this world, but it is a mid-boss battle, and it is against Poppy Kong. Poppy Kong, you fight her again, and she says, "Darlings, you're just in time to test my newly improved fragrance. In Viso? Is that what it is? Is that how you pronounce it? Is
yeah, I guess.
INVISEAUX.
I always just felt so bad in these fights, though, because it's just like, you're just like beating up a woman, DK.
That I was
just ruthlessly beating her up.
We talked about this back in the Freezer layer when I discussed this with Freezer. But yeah, there is the element of the big, burly, sort of macho Donkey Kong beating up a woman. And I think that's why Poppy, her whole shtick is turning invisible, because it minimizes the just brutality of what you're witnessing. And granted, you know, there is a 13-year-old girl egging Donkey Kong on, you know, so maybe that makes it a little bit more palatable. I don't know, but yeah, you are like, I guess Donkey Kong's going easy on her because it's not like you kill her. It's not like you break any bones. She gets dizzy, but I guess Donkey Kong's only going at it. I mean, I don't know how it works. If you're using a Bonanza, I'm sure that hurts. I'm sure Poppy is in pain.
This was a fascinating little boss fight, though. It's basically pulling from one of the Klungo fights in Banjo-Tooie where she goes invisible and then you have to follow her, but there's salt on the ground, so you know which way she's going.
Yes. Yeah, it's funny you bring up Klungo because I always think of Klungo when it comes to Grumpy Kong, functionally in their role in the story, because Grumpy is the one creating the monsters, creating the tech for Void, and Poppy is the, like, intelligence. She is the one, like, doing the surveys and scouting out the Benandium roots and the underground world itself. But she is the one who turns invisible, like Klungo, using her perfume, which it's funny that Voidco is a mining company, and yet they also have a perfume on the market. Like, that's diversifying. That is making sure your business model isn't just locked into this one thing. That's smart. That is, I mean, it's a wild diversification of your portfolio. Like, oh yeah, we mine and we also sell colognes and fragrances at Macy's. Like, okay.
Well, you definitely get the feeling that Void Kong is he just wants money. He doesn't care how he gets it.
I would also imagine having to do sweaty mine work really makes you self-conscious about your BO. So you would want to disguise that however possible. So that might explain why they opened up research into that. Because I think Void Kong is a fancy little man. You know, he likes the trappings of wealth and elegance. He's a little bit bougie in that way. You know, he wears the big, like, fur coats and jewelry, and like he's got the grill, and maybe bougie's not, like, he has the finer taste of like a rap video, but he still has expensive taste, and so I could see him want to, you know, branch out into some high-end markets, even though I think in this case Poppy is just using it because it turns her invisible, and then she maybe stands a chance against the big hulking gorilla who can now mutate himself into 5 different forms.
Yep.
But she doesn't stand a chance. She gets beat up, and she picks herself up, and she just says, "I'm done. That's it. This sucks. This isn't a good time. What am I doing?" So she says, "I see how things are. This operation has been a joke." She takes off her glasses, you know, because I'm sure they're dirty after having a gorilla slobber all over them. She says, "There's no profit to be had, that's for sure. Well, I won't waste my talents any longer. I'm out. I resign." And I was just like, that's interesting. Like, for one, how can I trust you? 2, this isn't much of a face turn yet. Like, you're gonna have to do more to prove to me that you're no longer a hostile threat. Like, okay, you quit. That doesn't atone for what you've done so far. Like, what are you gonna do for me, Poppy? But I did find it interesting that they had the character. Seemingly, they removed her from the villainous stable at this point in the story. I was like, that's interesting. Yeah. Like, it did bring to mind Klungo from Banjo-Tooie again, because Klungo also has a face turn late game because he's just tired of getting beat up all the time.
And then you gotta appear at the end of the game and eat all of the food at the party before the heroes get there.
Yeah. Oh, that Klungo. Oh, he's this gluttonous slob, and there's no rewards for the heroes who actually did the hard work. But Poppy, you can talk with her a little bit afterwards. You know, she stands around, and Poppy will say, "Pauline, I underestimated that power of yours. It's remarkable." And then Pauline doesn't know what the hell she's on about, and she says, "It's not. I mean..." And then Pauline just sighs out of, like, resignation, frustration. Like, what do you mean my power? Everybody's going on about my power. I'm a 13-year-old girl that likes to sing in the shower. What the hell is happening here? And Poppy's like, well, no matter. I'm done doing business with that fool of a president. I'm gonna save that image for later. Which means I have no reason to get in your way. I presume you two are still trying to get to the planet core? It's not as if I care, but good luck nonetheless. And as an aside, Pauline says to DK, "Poppy seems different. Maybe she'll be happier. and nicer now that she's not working at that awful company. I mean, sometimes that's all it takes. You leave a toxic job and you have a new perspective on life.
We're continuing the thing where Donkey Kong games give us things we wish we could do in the real world, where we can all just quit our awful jobs and just be happy.
Yeah, unfortunately, my awful job is Donkey Kong journalism, so I'm kind of locked in at this point. No, I'm just joking. I love it. I wouldn't do anything else, even if I could do something that's actually beneficial to society. No, I'm happy being in my frivolous little corner here.
I just love how the game just kind of says, like, if you have a terrible job, just quit.
Just quit. Just quit. I mean,
be happy.
Also, it's a hell of a time to quit, Poppy, because you're 1,202 layers underneath the Earth's surface. Like, I don't know. I would have, my first thing would be like, okay, well, how do I get back up?
Yeah.
Will the elevator help me? I've kind of been a bit of a problematic nuisance to all these animal tribes and the fractones. Like, I'm kind of on my own now. Like, I don't know. Maybe I would want to play both sides for a little bit longer while I look for my exit. But hey, kudos to her. I mean, it takes gumption to quit at that point. There is a sunk cost fallacy that too many people just stay in until they're in over their heads and they feel like they can't quit. And then it just goes very, very poorly for them.
This moment kind of also made me think that, like, maybe they'll want to bring Poppy back in a future game. And then we don't want to have to force her to still be a villainous role.
Yeah, and I like that because, it was exciting getting 3 new Kongs for this game. Void, Grumpy, and Poppy, but it was also a little bit tempered for me because I was like, well, we've had new villainous Kongs since the rare buyout. I mean, we had all the Jungle Beat Kongs, and even though they kind of had a face turn at the end of Jungle Beat, a very ill-defined one, but still, they haven't appeared since New Play Control Jungle Beat. So it's like, woo, yeah, I'll believe that these are going to be reoccurring characters when I see it. So it's still cool to see because it does open up the possibility that maybe Poppy will stick around. And I think given that she's become sort of a thirst trap for a segment of the fandom, they would appreciate that as well.
Yep, probably.
Yeah. Just a banana in my pocket says, no sunk cost fallacies in a sinkhole. Yeah, I keep saying stuff that could be applied to the idea of Donkey Kong Bananza and burrowing deeper into an underground world. And I don't know if it's accidental, intentional, or if it's just my brain is so mired in Bonanza that it just speaks this way. Like, it just processes language in effectively banana glyphs now. And just Andre says, a thirst trapantula. Thank you for correcting me. Chocolate Milk Drinker says, Donkey Kong journalism is beneficial to society, Hyle. Well, I'll keep telling myself that as I try to sleep at night. As I look at the burning world around me and asking, can I be doing more? I'll just remember your words where you say, yes, you're doing plenty, Hyle. Just go to sleep. All right. Sublayer 1203. This is my personal, I think, favorite part of the entire world of Radiance Layer. This is Serpent Sands, a big desert with a small village in the middle. And there's also kind of a sky walkway in the distance, which we'll get into a little bit. But the primary appeal of Serpent Sands is you've got this big, expansive white sand desert that you can explore. But then you've also got a lot of like snaking, underground passages, which are accessed via various different entry points throughout the desert, including crystal sculptures throughout in the distance. And there are 3 crystal structures of Voidco, of the 3 Voidco employees, one of which is now a former employee. So just like we had their faces carved into the side of the canyon layer, here we have Grumpy Kong has created a self-portrait of himself, as well as Poppy Kong, which is awkward now, and Void Kong. And I love this little detail. And also just because it's not going well for Voidco, it's not going well for Void Kong, but Poppy has already quit, and there is this depiction of her with Grumpy, and it just brought to mind the poem Ozymandias. How like great works, how like these seemingly insurmountable empires just fade into the sands with time. Nothing is impermanent. Nothing is permanent. There is only impermanence. And that is certainly true of Void's machinations already. We see these sculptures where whether or not they had any more to them, they're already seemingly being devoured by the sand. And it's just such a lovely little detail. Just like there are so many character head sculptures in the history of the DKU, just carved in various islands and mountains. And here, it's just a neat little touch, and there's just a lot being communicated through it that, again, your like frontal lobe might not pick up on it, but some part of your brain is registering that this is basically signifying Voidco unraveling.
I also just love that there's a sign next to Grumpy Kong's face that says it's self-portrait, and then Donkey Kong notes that it has sloppy handwriting.
Yep. Which, as somebody who has sloppy handwriting, I don't like the inferred idea that anybody with sloppy handwriting is, to use a term the Snake Elder used, uncouth. I like to view myself as prim and proper when I need to be. This sounds like a lyric from the DK rap. I apologize, but I have terrible handwriting. I have the handwriting of a toddler on caffeine and meth. So it's like, Grumpy might have poor handwriting, but you know what? He's a brilliant inventor. So I'm going to use that as a badge of honor. I'm not going to see it as a personal slight.
I also like there's a little place in this sands here where you go underground, and then there's like 5 tarpantulas you have to solve to get all the balloons out of them.
Yeah,
there's one of the little segment there.
Balloon popping mini games, which have been popping up throughout the game, usually in challenge courses. But yeah, there's a lot to explore here, and I suppose you can just use the elephant bonanza to like clear the sand. But for me, part of the fun was just exploring and trying to use like hand slap sonar and like breaking through the eyes and mouths of like the Void sculpture or Grumpy or Poppy, and just seeing what's in. Yeah, this is also where the extra rare fossil, the giant singular one, is located. And we haven't talked about it. Usually I just get all the fossil discussion done in one go, but I wanted to say that because this is, I think, one of the first fossils that I saw the shape on the HUD, and I didn't know exactly what it was. My brain wasn't putting the pieces together. I thought maybe, because I saw this like spiky orb, and I was like, oh, it's probably going to be a puffed up from off of Donkey Kong Country 2, Donkey Kong Land 2, Donkey Kong 64, sort of Banjo-Tooie, sort of Tropical Freeze, and I was like, yeah, that's what it's going to be. That makes sense given what they've been referencing so far. And the extra rare fossil is in this big concrete slab off in the desert, and it's being swarmed by illuminoids, the version of the scorpion that has to be cast in shade to have them shrivel up into their sweet tart form. And it's a little bit harder to deal with them because you are in a bright desert. You know, the sun is shining, the synthetic sun is shining. So you have to really like exploit the molavoids that pop up and use them as makeshift columns to cast shadow over the illuminoids. But in this case, I don't believe there's anything nearby to cast shadow on these illuminoids. So you basically just have to bum rush them, come in with Kong Bananza or whatever. And I'm sure there's other ways to go about it. You can create shadow if you're diligent enough. But I was just like, no, I want to see what this is.
There's just like a small border around them, which is what I use to defeat them.
Okay.
You have to push them into the corner.
Okay, I just went in guns blazing, metaphorical guns blazing with the Kong Bananza, and I was like, let's make this quick. And then every time they would get near me, I would jump off and wait for them to scatter, then I would jump back on. You just have to keep pounding it, and then eventually it pops up. And it's, again, just this spiny mass, and I'm like, that doesn't even look like a puffed up. What the hell is that? My brain couldn't process it because I was not expecting this reference. And this is when I knew I'm going to have to ask Joy to be on the Kongversation to discuss, at this point, the most impressive Donkey Kong Country 3 reference in the game. Blew me away. It's a Lurchin! It's a Lurchin!
It is a bit weird that it's like a closed Lurchin. You kind of expect it to be an open one, so you can see the face, but... You know,
it kind of makes sense,
Great
though.
To see that.
Kind of makes sense if it's a dead Lurchin. I guess it would be closed, right? So
yeah, I suppose.
And if it's, you know, I would like, a lot of these seemed like they were like flash frozen, but I guess in some cases we saw with the like dinosaurs that they did like just have skeletal remains. So in this case, the flesh might have like rotted, and the fossilized remains are just the outer shell of the Lurchin. But for those who don't remember, Lurchins are the sea urchins that serve the Kremlin crew in Donkey Kong Country 3 and Donkey Kong Land 3. And why a giant Lurchin? Well, there was a boss in both DKC 3 and L3 with the Roman numerals that was a Lurchin, and it was Barbos or Barbos. I think it's supposed to be Barbos because she's a boss, but yeah. It's only spelled with one S.
I suppose when you kill her, she does shrink and shrivel up, just like she's here. So it does explain.
Yeah. This,
funnily enough, in DC3, you can still get hurt by her even after she's dead, which is always funny.
Yeah. I was not expecting a damn Lurchin reference in Donkey Kong Bananza. I mean, going back to that first trailer when we saw the naughty fossil, we were all celebrating. There was dancing in the street, like lovers uniting, and just fireworks and just hours of euphoria based on that one naughty fossil, because that's how desperate we were. That's how thirsty we were for any recognition of any aspect of the Donkey Kong series beyond like 5 Kongs and 2 animal buddies. Just this, and Professor Chops. And we just wanted something, some recognition of the long, lustrous history of Donkey Kong. And so, yeah, naughties from the first Donkey Kong Country and Donkey Kong 64, that makes sense. But a Lurchin from Donkey Kong Country 3, and even when I was reading the description, I was like, sea urchin? It's like covered with spikes on the outside, yet tasty on the inside. It often fell prey to swordfish while lurching. And then I realized it took me until I saw the word lurching and vulnerable to understand what I was seeing, because my brain, while even seeing the banana bird reference earlier in the world, could not fathom that we were getting this deep cut DKC3 reference in Donkey Kong Bananza.
Even when I was just looking at it, I was just wondering, like, is it just like the sea lily from earlier, where it's like not a Donkey Kong thing? Yeah, then lurching definitely made me think, okay, I get it now.
Well, also, it fell prey to swordfish is a big tell as well. But even then, like, I was stuck on Puffed Up because I felt like Puffed Up is the reference they would make if they were going to go with an aquatic baddie that is of that general shape. But to have a Lurchin reference, oh my god. Like, I'm so sorry. Well, no, I'm not going to apologize for there not being a Kiddy Kong fossil because that would probably be traumatizing for you.
Yeah. I'm just glad to know that Donkey Kong Country 3 is on the table for references and stuff now.
Yeah, it is. I mean, and I think that it's apparent that even though we didn't get a 2D challenge course based on Donkey Kong Country 3, and again, I'm sorry about that, it's still clear to me that the team behind Bonanza, it's clear that there are fans of the entire original trilogy because we are getting Donkey Kong Country 3 references. And I'm not going to say whether or not we get any more Donkey Kong Country 3 references, but the fact that Lurchin got a shout out in 2025. Wow. That is just, again, a year ago, that would have been unthinkable. 6 months ago, that would have been unthinkable. Like, where are we as a fandom where we can get those references tossed off like it's nothing, to the point where it even drives hardcore fans mad trying to figure out what it's from, even though we know our brains just can't put the pieces together because we are not used to them going to that well.
Yeah. And this does give me hope that we'll get, like, Bonanza 2 will maybe have more Donkey Kong Country 3 in it. Maybe Kiddy Kong will eventually come back.
Courtney says, Barboss is scary enough without imagining her flesh rotting away. Thank you. I mean, if this was a Mario game, we would get dry Barboss. But
yeah.
Donkey Kong Country 3, we're big fans. I know it's your favorite Donkey Kong Country game, right?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, it's probably my second favorite. I really like Tropical Freeze, but the nostalgia of Country 3 and really the environment of it, I just adore it so much. And my favorite is Donkey Kong Country 2. I hate to be so basic. I hate to be so typical, but DKC2 is my all-time favorite. And yeah, once upon a time, it would have been like pulling teeth just to get a DKC2 reference. Now, we had gotten plenty, like throughout the years, but even then, like, if they're going to reference anything, it's going to be Donkey Kong Country 1, maybe Donkey Kong 64, and the arcade games. One exception to that rule, though, strangely, bizarrely, has always been Rattly the Rattlesnake. And I did a whole video about this. It was actually the first DKU Lore Tour video I did, talking about the inexplicable in-universe popularity of Radley, and how Radley has been referenced far beyond his stature and actual physical presence in the Donkey Kong games would suggest. I mean, he's only been in 2 Donkey Kong games, Donkey Kong Country 2 and Land 2, but he's been referenced so many times. Referenced in Banjo-Kazooie, referenced in Super Mario Odyssey. And so one of my predictions, one of my very light predictions going into Bonanza was Radley will be referenced somewhere. And that actually came true in Freezer Layer. There was a sign in Freezer Layer that suggests the zebras created a new dessert based on Radley the Rattlesnake. And I was like, well, there we go. There's our Radley reference. Done. Me not thinking there's going to be a whole snake layer to come. And so when we got down here and there was the little snake in Shedlight Cave, I was thinking, okay, will we get a second Radley reference? It's like Hobbits and breakfast. Like, well, we've had one, yes, but what about second Radley reference? Well, there is. Thank log, there's a second Radley reference, and it's actually in the style shop. It's one of Pauline's outfits. It's called the Rattle Radiance outfit. And this is basically, it's the same as the other Radiance outfits. It makes her basically cosplay as a snake with the workshop apron on top. But this one will give her the general color scheme and appearance of Radley.
Definitely the outfit I had her in for a while, just because it was a really cool reference, even if I didn't use Snake Bonanza that much.
Yeah, I immediately. So, but at this point in the game, I would like switch her into her region specific clothes for a bit, but I would usually default back to the Diva outfit, which I got from scanning the amiibo back in Resort Layer. But this one, I think, retired the Diva dress for me. This one is what I put her in, and then I kept her in this for a while because I was just like, this is the outfit that goes the hardest as far as pleasing that part of my brain that just needs references, that just needs that sweet, sweet dopamine hit of being reminded of Radley the rattlesnake. So yeah, I loved this reference, and I love that Radley's popularity and fame even extends 1,200 some layers beneath the Earth's surface. I mean, that's impressive.
I did find it a little weird how long it takes for you to find like a proper style shop in this world, because this is the first one you find. If you don't want to buy from, the guy
Trusty
at all
Tone?
the getaways.
Yeah.
Yeah. I did like the other outfits here too, though. Like, the defense bridges are just what Donkey Kong had for the rest of the game for me, just because it was, you up your defense, and that's very helpful. And then the banana tie was also here, which is just funny.
Yeah, the banana bolo. Yeah. It's funny how they put Donkey Kong in neckwear that's not a necktie. It feels so wrong not to have something dangling from his neck. And like you can put him in bow ties, and here's a bolo tie, and I'm just like, it feels wrong. I basically stuck with the golden banana, or the golden tie that increases your Banergy quicker, because it was the closest thing that read as a traditional DK tie to me, while still, mixing it up a little bit. But yeah, with Pauline, I was a lot more adventurous with Donkey Kong. Like at this point, I did switch Donkey Kong's britches in this layer once I collected all the fossils, because my brain just thrives on completionism. So I have to collect all the fossils before I spend all the fossils. In fact, I was watching the Idaho crew stream of Bonanza, the most recent one, and I was like, they collected bare minimum fossils and then they immediately spent them, and I cringed. I was like, I can't do that. I have to have every single fossil before I spend a single fossil in a layer. But when I did spend my fossils, and I got the Rattle Radiance outfit for Pauline, and I got the britches for Donkey Kong that were like, they look like a wild berry Pop-Tart. I forget the name.
Defense bridges.
Defense bridges, yeah. Because it reduces the amount of damage you take from enemies. And I was like, that sounds like something that's universally beneficial, no matter the context, especially as I progress towards the planet core. So I switched him in that, and I like the way he looks. But yeah, a lot of the bridges, I didn't like the way it made Donkey Kong's ass look. It really like reduced the effectiveness of his buttocks. And I had him in the like giraffe printed britches from Canyon Layer for the longest time after this, until this layer, and then I switched him into the defense britches.
As we all know, Donkey Kong's ass is the most important part.
That's the first and last consideration a true Donkey Kong player must make when playing Donkey Kong Bananza. So anyway, let's talk about Cranky's unique dialogue in Radiance Layer. His Radiance rant, which sounds like a contradiction, a Radiance rant, but Cranky and Rambi are hiding up top of two massive snake crystal sculptures on the edge of the village. If you look up, you can you usually see Ramby's horn first from the distance, but Cranky is up on the other one. So you climb up there and you talk to him, and he goes through his normal repeating rants. And the unique dialogue he has here is, "What a rotten crook, glamming himself up with shiny golden whatevers. Such a shallow show-off. Hasn't he ever heard of a little thing called class?" Well, it sounds like Void Kong. It sounds like the way I just described Void Kong in his fashion sense. So, yeah, everything's adding up. I don't think Cranky's referring to anything else.
I think he's just complaining about the younger generation and their fashion choices.
Right. It's what Cranky always does. I remember in Donkey Kong Country 1, he complained about Donkey Kong's tie, and he said, "You need to turn that tie off," suggesting it's too bright. And I'm like, I don't know, Cranky. I was playing Donkey Kong 94, and it seemed like you had a tie too, you hypocrite.
I guess his was in black and white, though, so it's different.
Yeah.
It's not as bright.
Unless you're playing on Super Game Boy.
Yeah.
One thing that's fun to do with Cranky in this world, though, is because he's on very fragile, easily breakable sculpture, and there is Boom Rock nearby, you don't have to climb up to talk to him. You can actually bring him down to you, like those occasions where he's standing on the platforms with the glue gum. You can take the Boom Rock, blow up the serpent or snake sculpture, and watch as Cranky Kong plummets to the ground. I took so many screenshots of him falling in midair, his glasses flying off. It's so much fun to do. It's nice to, be able to beat him up a little bit. Like, you can only high five him in close proximity, but there are occasions where you can put the fear of God into him, make him think he's about to reunite with his wife.
I just love, this whole town here in general, because this is the town where you find, the workshops of all of the snakes, where you can see them actually working on stuff, and you can see their blueprints and everything, and also where the crates were, who have, the lamps from the other places.
Right. Yeah.
And then there was also there's one of the ruins here, which is called Surfing in Shadow, where you're using the gluminoids and luminoids to go across brambles and just turf surf across them. And I really loved that one, where you have to avoid the light, but then at one point you have to grab an luminoid and go through the light to go backwards.
Yeah.
The second one, and really good one there.
Yeah, that's when I actually had to restart because I realized I went too far and I couldn't get back, and I was like, because I'm always on the lookout. My first objective is, where is the hidden Benandium gem in these challenge courses? There's always the midpoint one, there's always the one at the very end, but then there's the one hiding somewhere. It could be near the start, it could be near the end, somewhere in the middle maybe. So that's my first objective, is find that one, because the other two will just come by simply progressing. And then if I realize I've gone too far, I just restart it out of spite, because I don't know, you can always go back and get them at your leisure, but it's just one of those things where it's like, no, that's the one I want more than anyone.
Yeah.
Yeah, the whole town is just such a thoughtful design, and it's so intricate, and I really felt bad whenever I would break any of the terrain here, because everything is so fragile and precise, and you feel like the biggest clod just stumbling through, smashing everything, and it's just... And there are occasions you have to break stuff, so it's just like, well, placate yourself knowing that the terrain can reset. The fractones come in and just fix everything after you leave, or you go to sleep at night or whatever. So don't feel so bad that you've temporarily halted the snake's work.
I found it so funny when the one workshop inside the snake head, where there's just when you fall through the top of the snake head, you just destroy the floor under you. You're like, oops, you're right behind the dude working, and you're destroying his workshop just by hopping inside.
Yeah. Just Andre points out that there is the sleepy snake that you wake up, and it's very rude.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's only fitting you want to high five him so he can undress into his pajamas. You're just trying to help him get a more peaceful sleep. Don't sleep in your work clothes, dude. You're gonna get the bed all filthy.
There's also the tunnels under the town as well.
Yeah.
And then there was a very funny tablet where there's a snake that wrote about, like, I would curse the snake that decided we have to dig tunnels through all the salt here, but alas, I was the snake that did that.
Yeah.
Funny little moment there.
There's so many little details by just exploring, and, you know, like, I'm always on lookout too for the bonus stage, the, like, golden bonus stage that is like one hidden in each world, and it's like, okay, where is it here? Where is it here? It's got to be down here, right? It's got to be in these little winding corridors underneath the desert, and it was. But it's just of course I'm also always looking for the Explorer Tone tablets, and I think this is the only one that gave me trouble because the Explorer Tone tablet was hidden beneath the ground, and I had to actually go back because I was like, wait, I haven't found. They generally have one Saga of the Explorer Tone lore tablet per sublayer. I haven't found it in Sublayer 1203, so I need to go back and I need to dig some more. I need to find the tunnel it's in, which I eventually did, you know, but just have to be thorough. Can't speedrun. Have to spend 30 hours at least in every world. I didn't spend that much time in the Divide or the Junction, but I spent longer than most people, I'm sure. So, moving on from Sublayer 1203, there's a process because you have to cross the town and then cross a bridge to an area called the Window Viper. Now, this is like
I love the pun.
It's a pun, and I think it's a reference. So, did you ever read the book Scary Stories That Tell in the Dark?
I don't think I have, no.
Okay, so there is a story, and I don't know if the story predates it, because there are some stories in that book. It's a scary story book for kids. It's kind of a staple of a lot of elementary school libraries, or at least it was when I was that age. And a lot of these are from folklore, or a lot of these are like retold from tradition. Some of them are original. There's one story in there called The Viper. And it's very short, so I'm just going to read it really quick because I think this could be the first Scary Stories That Tell in the Dark reference in the entire DKU. What most people remember about this book, and that's actually a series of books, I think there are 3 of them maybe, absolutely terrifying artwork. Like, some of the most grotesque imagery ever sold and marketed to children. Like, the artwork in the book is actually what made the stories scary. Not all of them were scary. Some of them were like, that it was almost scary, but it wasn't. But there, like, a lot of these are really sold based on their artwork. So if you don't know what I'm talking about, just look it up and be amazed at what was marketed towards kids in the 80s and 90s. But this story says, basically, a widow lived alone on the top floor of an apartment house. One morning, her telephone rang. "Hello?" she said. And then the voice said, "This is the Viper. I'm coming up." Somebody's fooling around, she thought, and hung up. A half hour later, the telephone rang again. It was the same man. "It's the Viper," he said. "I'll be up soon." The widow didn't know what to think, but she was getting frightened. Once more, the telephone rang. Again, it was the Viper. "I'm coming up now," he said. She quickly called the police. They said they would be right over. When the doorbell rang, she sighed with relief. They are here, she thought. But when she opened the door, there stood a little old man with a bucket and a cloth. "I am the Viper," he said. "I wish to wash and wipe the windows." And that's what I think Window Viper is a reference to. Because every location in Radiance Layer is named after a snake of some sort. And this is a big, long corridor with windows. And yeah, I think somebody in the localization team remembered that story from childhood and put that in there, which I greatly appreciate if that is the origin for it.
Yeah.
Chocolate Milk Drinker says, "God damn, this art is grotesque." Happy to pass my childhood trauma on to the next generations.
And I just love how, like, even at this point, we're still getting, like, new puzzles with the light. Because now we have the two suns, and you have to move the two suns to figure everything out.
This is probably my least favorite. This is probably my least favorite part of the whole world. I didn't hate it, but it was a lot slower and more deliberate because you have to, at this point, there are two synthetic suns down here, and you have to basically bounce the light from one to the other to create shade. You just have to constantly shift that light because there are traversable clouds that will appear in the right, like, to create paths where Donkey Kong has to go. And to get the clouds to be actually something you can walk on, you have to move the light back and forth. So there's just a lot of like, oh, I gotta stop, I have to throw something at this switch in the distance so I can create a bridge here. And it's fine, and it's fun, and it's part of platforming. But it's weird how it's like one of the most platforming aspects of this entire game. And I was like, oh, I don't find this as enjoyable as the rest of the game. Me being the platformer fan that I am.
This is just such a gimmick-driven world, and I really enjoyed the gimmick of it. Because they find so many different things they can do with the light.
Yeah, like, people say gimmick like it's a bad thing. Like, oftentimes people say Donkey Kong Country 3 was overloaded with gimmicks. And I'm like, yes, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. Donkey Kong Country 3 was the third one in the space of 2 calendar years, 94 to 96. So yeah, they loaded it up with gimmicks to set it apart. Most of the time they worked really well. And most of the time I think it worked really well in Radiance Layer as well. Like, I thought it was very creative, inventive, and I love that they're still finding new ways to switch up terrain and how you can engage with terrain and how that terrain engages with enemies, and using terrain to interact with other terrain to dispatch the enemies, and just, oh god, it's so fun. But yeah, then you eventually get to the hole that makes you that lets you drop down to Sublayer 1204, the lowest level of this world. But before we get to that, before we talk about the boss and everything after, I want to talk really quick, as I like to do, about the Saga of the Exploratones found in Radiance Layer. And there are 5 of these in Radiance Layer keeps going. There are 5 sublayers, and there are 5 lore tablets from the Exploratone to read. So I will be as quick as I can when it comes to this. Saga of the Exploratone, verse 20. The moment we arrived, we sunk deep into the soft sands. We do not know how many years we spent immobile there, but eventually we felt a tapping on our head. A long, tube-like creature had mistaken us for ore and was attempting to dig us out with its tools. This snake, as it called itself, apologized profusely for its error and set about making amends. Lacking the arms or legs that other creatures possess, the snake used its tail to deftly extricate us from the sand. So again, another reference to the Exploratone being inert for several years. We got one of those in Resort Layer, I believe. And here again, it just, yeah, the Exploratone can just hibernate 4 years, no problem, doesn't need sustenance, doesn't need anything in the way of nutrition or water or anything to sustain its life. It can just be. And yeah, never encountered a snake before this as well, and was just amazed at the tube creature greeting them.
When I read this, I posted on Blue Sky that like the snake apologizing profusely for its error and said about making amends and said like, wow, it's better than most humans.
If only we were all tubes. I think maybe that is the key to universal harmony. Is just imagine if you were a tube and you had to just slither on the ground everywhere. It would really put you more in touch with the earth and all of its inhabitants, I think.
Yep.
Verse 21. After following a long snake-like path, now that I know what a snake is, they love using it, the landscape suddenly opened up. Before us was a glowing lake, but not truly a lake. Instead, it was light-refracting rocks that filled the grotto floor. These snakes told us they chisel off pieces of these rocks and use them to make light fixtures. Enlightening.
They're figuring out puns.
Yeah. The Explorer Tone is learning a lot, but it's mostly learning how to have fun with the language. Verse 22. We met a snake who referred to himself as a sculptor of light. He showed us a number of his works in progress, and we were impressed. Though unfinished, the pieces crafted with crystals and shining stones all seemed very promising. Before we left, the Sculptor of Light had a proposal for us. Your translucency is perfect. Would you consider becoming part of one of my pieces? We politely refused. I just appreciate, because as somebody who's used fractonium to create some inappropriate sculptures in my day, I appreciate that the Snake Elder was also thinking in those terms. Like, oh, I bet I can make a giant phallus out of you.
Yeah.
Verse 23. This is the one that was in the corridor underneath Serpent Sands in 1203. So that one took me a while to find. Verse 23. The ground here is an unbroken blanket of dazzling sand. It forms hills and slopes as though it is undulating. Finally, undulating has been used in a Donkey Kong game as well. I'm just ticking off all these words I've always wanted to see in a DK game. It has a different consistency here. It is glossier and highly translucent. Under bright light, we believe that it would sparkle most beautifully. And not all of them provide any great detail with the lore or even the story of the Explorer Tone. Some of them are just musings of this fractone from long ago. And then that brings us down to Sublayer 1204, and this is the last Explorer Tone tablet found in Radiance Layer. Crystals grow in clusters here. They seem to slither through these caverns like snakes. We have heard that the crystals will one day be used to make light fixtures or other works of art. Perhaps the snake's creations will make their way to other lands one day. And I really like that little piece of info because it does suggest that at the time of the Explorer Tone's travels, it predates like the synthetic suns even. So the hilltop layer that the Explorer Tone came from didn't even have a sun in the sky.
Yeah. I guess you'd have to wonder if they have like dark vision.
Yeah, I don't
assume they can see in the dark.
Right. I don't know like what the actual like ability of the fractones is as far as like processing the light spectrum, considering they are underground creatures and they came about in the underground world. Like I would imagine, you would think putting a synthetic sun there would actually blind them. It wouldn't be beneficial to them, but maybe they have like far faster adaptability than like similar surface creatures who like come about in like evolve in caves or wherever, like those blind fish. Chocolate Milk Drinker, in reference to the Explorer Tone being a nerd, says, I like to think of it as Bender in that one episode of Futurama where his head got dropped off in 1940s America and was sitting there in silence until the year 3000, where Fry and Leela digged him up. Yeah, something like that. And just a banana in my pocket says maybe they were stuck for 12 minutes and just have an awful sense of time. Yeah, it could have been, too, that the Explorer Tone, this all happened like yesterday, and the Explorer Tone is just slightly ahead of Donkey Kong and Pauline, but it's just really shit at telling time. Because, yeah, there's no, like, clocks, there's no actual natural sun to tell the days with, or the rotation of the Earth, so how would they know? It's like Jem brought up on the Resort Layer episode. They don't know anything. Okay, one more thing to get to before we get to the boss. Sorry, Joy. I have to talk about the most interesting pieces of Pauline's getaway commentary, where she would not let Donkey Kong sleep. Now, this is all, again, subjective. These are the ones I found interesting, and the ones I find interesting are the ones that either relate to Pauline's own past or her relationship with Donkey Kong. And there are 3 that I specifically highlighted here, so I will read those really quick. Pauline will say, "Hey DK, you awake?" And Donkey Kong can say, "Hmm?" Or Donkey Kong can say, "Zzz." But you gotta say, "Hmm," if you want Pauline to speak her mind. She says, "So, back when I was little, I used to sing all the time. And my grandma, she would always stop and listen to me. She'd smile and clap. She seemed so happy for me. Sorry, I just remembered that. I'm not sure why. Good night." Just always intrigued by the references to Pauline's grandma. Moving on.
Yeah.
"Hey DK, are you awake? I just had a great idea. Rambi should start a taxi service in my hometown. The Rambi taxi, he'll get you there in a smash. He could stampede through the sky and bust through buildings to find the quickest routes. And, maybe that's not such a good idea, huh?" So, okay, like, so at
I
this...
love that one.
Yeah, I love that one. I love that she's still referring to Rambi as a singular entity, even after Racing Layer. But, so at this point, I mean, most people who are in the know, most people who know context of past Nintendo games will figure that Pauline is talking about New Donk City. And that made me think, Pauline, aren't there, like, streets named after Rambi? Like, isn't there a Rambi street in New Donk City? So how, like, I guess you don't know every street name in your city, but how have you never been exposed to any of this stuff if you are indeed from New Donk City? Like, shouldn't this all be ringing a bell? Because everything in your city is named after something from Donkey. Okay, whatever. She's just not a very observant child.
Would also just be the question of how it fits into the timeline exactly.
I guess that's still up in the air at this point. Yeah. Maybe this is actually a prequel to everything, despite, all that discussion that Donkey Kong had with Diddy and Dixie in the last layer, where they referenced Donkey Kong Country 2, but not 3.
Yeah.
All right, last one. "Hey DK, are you awake? I'm having the time of my life. The thing is, when I first got to the underground world, I was just so scared. But now I love exploring this place. Everything here is so wild and new. It's exciting, I never would have felt like this if I stayed on the surface. I hope we can always go on adventures together, DK." So, that's the getaway. That one in particular is from the last getaway in Sublayer 1204. And when I saw that, I laughed because I knew that was some heavy foreshadowing that things were about to go very, very bad in this game's narrative for young Pauline. I was like, oh no, they're about to stick the dagger in our hearts, aren't they? And it really made me a little bit nervous to continue because I was like, I was starting to put together different pieces and context, and I was remembering there are like certain like messages in the game where you're like looking at like moves or like load screens, and they make reference to when Pauline is on Donkey Kong's back. And, you know, you might think, oh, that's like before Donkey Kong meets up with Oddrock, and then she de-rocks into Pauline. But then you're like, but that's probably referencing to something that happens later in the game too. And then that heavy-handed getaway commentary, and you're like, something's about to happen. Okay, well,
yep.
Here we are, Sublayer 1204. And the screen, when you load into Sublayer 1204, you see Grumpy Kong working on something down in this grotto. And you drop down, and there's like two kind of like levels to this sublayer. There's the top side one, and then there's one you have to break down through where you assume Grumpy is. And so you talk to one of the snake fractones, and they say, the ground has been shaking for a while now. We're not sure why. And then it shakes actually a little bit, and they say, see, is something coming? And, you know, Grumpy's presence down below has been foreshadowed, I think, since you arrived in Sublayer 1203. One of the snakes makes reference to the fact that Grumpy has been through. And the ground shaking has been a common complaint and fear of the snakes throughout the world as you've progressed. So, you know, you're thinking, is this something Grumpy is doing? Is this related to whatever Grumpy's building down there? Is he causing everything to shake? And you see there's a keyhole by the snake fractone up in the top level of 1204. But then you actually have to break through the crystal to get down to Grumpy. The little exclamation mark for the progress is in this little patch where Fractone is like, do we hear a pickaxe? So you're like, all right, I have to get down there, and I guess I have to defeat Grumpy, and then I have to take the key back up to the top level somehow, because that's where the keyhole is. Okay, whatever. We'll see how this plays out. And Grumpy's down there, and he says, this is going to be a career highlight. And oh no, he has a new improved version of the King Crocoid mech suit he fought you with back in Canyon Layer. This time it's covered in shade ore. So you're going to have to lure it into the light in order to do any damage to him. What did you think about this boss fight?
I loved having to like destroy the stuff above him to get the light through and then get him underneath it.
Yeah.
It's a neat little concept there. Could be a little annoying at times.
It could be annoying, but it definitely was a lot more engaging than the Canyon Layer fight with a Grumpy. I was a little, like, not let down with really any of the boss fights. They are what they are in this game. They're not one of the primary draws of Bonanza, I would say, at this point. But I think at this point they are getting a little bit more inventive. They are getting a little bit more involved, and you have to start pulling together different pieces of the game, be it different Bonanza abilities or different like ways to interact with terrain in order to dispatch the bosses. So yeah, like I really enjoyed this fight, and it's really satisfying just to like when you get a shot at Grumpy and you can just wail on him from the top of the little mech suit. It's always fun, and I feel less bad about it than I did about just assaulting Poppy, you know? So you defeat Grumpy, and Grumpy like kind of spins around, and his eyes roll in the back of his head, and he says, "Guess it's time to clock out," which I appreciate the pun, Grumpy. I appreciate that you could still manage wordplay even with whatever brain damage Donkey Kong just caused you. And again, Poppy wasn't knocked out. Grumpy is like the big burly orangutan dude in a big mech suit. Grumpy gets knocked out cold, but Poppy is just like gets a little dizzy, and then she's just like, I quit. It maybe backs up the theory that Donkey Kong's going a little easier on Poppy as far as striking her versus Grumpy, where he's giving it his all and actually fucking his shit up a little bit. But Grumpy passes out, and then you get this kind of atypical moment where instead of them doing their little dance, onto the next layer, their little joints wiggle. We get a cutscene, and I'm like, oh god, it's coming. It's coming. So Pauline says, "We did it, DK." And I took these screenshots that I'm looking at right now, and Pauline is in her Rattly outfit, her Rattle Radiance outfit. And
Yep.
it was like such a fun reference at the time, but this is the outfit I associate the most traumatic moment in the game with. Pauline gives him the thumbs up, and it says, "You and me, we're the best." And the earth starts shaking. Debris starts falling from the ceiling. She says, "What's going on?" The camera pans up, and it's Daddy Eel. Remember back in Landfill Layer when the little elevators made reference to the fact that their dad hadn't been home in a while, and their mom was getting worried. Well,
Yep.
it pays off. It finally pays off here because the Daddy Eel pops up. He's got some sort of device strapped to his face, clearly under its thrall, and the eel swallows Pauline. Pauline screams, "DK!" Donkey Kong tries to grab Pauline, but it's too late, and Pauline is swallowed whole. Donkey Kong bellows in anguish as the eel passes down through the makeshift tunnel it has created, and Donkey Kong falls behind, passing out in the progress. And yeah, you don't even get to unlock the intended hole up above. You just fall through this makeshift shaft that the Daddy Elevator created, and the entire narrative of the game is thrown up into the air. What did you think about this moment?
This was in one of the trailers, right? I feel. So it was like, we kind of knew it was coming, I think, but it was still surprised when it showed up.
This was briefly seen in the Bonanza Direct, and it didn't have any context attached to it. We didn't know when it would appear in the game. So when I said earlier that there was a cinematic part of Radiance Layer that did get shown in the hype cycle of this game, this is what I was referring to specifically. This moment where Pauline gets swallowed by what I'm just going to call Daddy Eel for now. And I remember this moment, and when I started playing Bonanza, I did not go back and revisit the Bonanza Direct, but part of my brain remembered this moment with the elevator, and I couldn't remember if it was like the mama elevator or what, but I remembered it seemed a little bit more antagonistic. It seemed like it was coded as being a bit of trouble, a spot of bother, if you will. And so in the back of my mind, I was wondering if this was coming, and it was basically confirmed for me in Landfill Layer when they started foreshadowing this, but I still didn't know when exactly it was going to happen. And when Pauline started talking about, "We're going to be together forever, Donkey Kong. This is never going to stop," I was like, okay, yeah, this is about to get very bleak. And I'm not talking about the beloved snowman boss from Donkey Kong Country 3, because there's no fossil for him in Radiance Layer.
I don't know if snow can be a fossil. I don't think so.
I mean, the top hat, maybe. I mean, it would probably degrade too with time, but
Pauline gets to experience what, is it Mary Magpie from Jolly Roger?
Yeah! Yeah, that's true. Yeah, so
DK can now go talk to Jolly Roger, and they can relate to having people eaten by fish that they knew.
I just hope Pauline has a Jiggy on her, otherwise Banjo and Kazooie will never get her out.
Yep.
Yeah, Mary Maggie, Courtney specifies.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, we have some calls to take. So you can call the DK Vine hotline anytime you want at 1-202-630-VINE. That is 8463. And we will take calls specifically if they are on the topic of the episode when we announce them. But if you call in about anything, I might save that for a future call sack episode where any topic goes. Before we start, we got a question for this episode on Blue Sky. Be sure to follow DK Vine on Blue Sky. The question reads, okay, I've been thinking about this ever since I first got to the Radiance Layer, but what if, when Crocodile Isle sank, Radley got stuck in the underground world and eventually became the Snake Elder? I mean, it explained why one of the most prominent moves of the Snake Bonanza is the charged jump. Well, thank you for the theory. It's certainly, I think, a valid one. I wouldn't personally subscribe to it just because the impression I get with all of the elders is that they are, at the very least, a few centuries old, if not older. And I think the time period between Radley and Radley's adventures in Donkey Kong Country 2 and Land 2, that would really limit the amount of time Radley could evolve into being both a successful DJ and also a prominent artist. And so I think the elders are the size they are because they have been swelling with Benandium energy, the Bonanza powers, for centuries, maybe even millennia. And so Radley might be a future elder. I could see that, given how revered Radley is among the entire world of the DKU and broader Nintendo multiverse. But I think the Snake Elder is probably his own character, who no doubt respects Radley a great deal, as we all do here in the fandom. But thank you for the question. All right, here we go.
Hello, DK Vine. My name is Chocolate Milk Drinker. I am calling in for the Radiance Layer episode of the Kongversation. Why am I calling in so early? Because I very easily forget about these things, so I just want to call in now. But anyways, I called in for the Tempest later voice of the suit, but I'm going to be honest, this was the weakest layer of Bonanza for me. It really felt like this was the moment in Bonanza for me where it felt okay, I still love this game. This is getting a little too weird for me. It was just okay, you can really tell this was made by the 3D Mario team at this point. I hate to say it, but there is a lot of stigmas that go along with the 3D Mario team. You can really, really easily tell them in Bonanza. And that's one of my least favorite things about it. It's just that you can really tell that it's made by a Mario team, and I really dislike that, honestly. I mean, this layer, it was way too dependent on the Snake Bonanza, and it was just, it was not that great. It was just way too forgettable. I don't really remember much happening to it besides the Poppy Kong boss fight. Those, little light switch enemies are pretty cool. That's, the only thing I like about this layer from it. It's really just a shame that they could have done something really interesting with this layer, but they didn't. It really just felt like some, weirdness that was just, felt like some sort of mandate or something. And I really dislike that because I'd say Bonanza is my favorite game of all time. I mean, I feel I don't personally feel there's any media that has, super bad stuff and, there's no, perfect media. But I think it's crazy that this is one of the weakest layers for me because, part of it looks super cool. I like the idea of all the snakes being these Renaissance era artists, but it's the level design. It was pretty bad. I really hate to say it, but this is probably my least favorite layer in the game for me. It's besides Landfill Layer, But I mean, even that still has some, like, really, like, slightly interesting story beats about the Harmony Eels. But, yeah, that's all I gotta say. I'm gonna be honest, this is my least favorite layer. Bye.
Oh, thank you for the call, Chocolate Milk Drinker. I'm sorry you didn't like Radiance Layer, and I'm sorry we've been so enthused by it, effervescent in our praise about Radiance Layer. I can say some bad things about it if you'd like. Hold on, let me think. Donkey Kong beats up a woman. That's kind of not cool. Kind of a bad look. It's not going to age well. 20 years, people will look back on Bonanza and say, remember when Donkey Kong beat up a woman? That's the sexy Kong who's become the mainstay of the series. Oh, God. And, you know, you're going to cancel Donkey Kong. I don't know. Like, I really liked Radiance Layer, but I think also at this point, I was talking about it with Joy before we started. I became such a slut for Donkey Kong Bananza that I was willing to maybe not overlook things, but I think I am more willing to accept some design choices that maybe like in the past I wouldn't have agreed with or I wouldn't have found endearing because the game has already won me over. That being said, I didn't have a problem really with anything on a conceptual level in Radiance Layer, except for maybe the bit with the clouds towards the end. I found that just a little bit, I think it was just too stop, start, and it didn't really have the kinetic flow of most of the rest of the game. But I'm fine when things like get mixed up like that. Like, it's not a permanent function of the game. It's just a very small area, and you get through it, and you don't have to go back.
Personally, I would say this is probably one of my favorite levels in the game, just because like it's a really unique concept, and then they have like 5 different ways that they play with that one concept. Yeah, and I really enjoyed that.
But you know, like not every world's gonna appeal to everyone, and I completely respect that. Like, I'm not saying you're wrong, Chocolate Milk Drinker, for not warming up to this world. I mean, there are worlds in games I love and have loved since I was a kid that I don't like that much. I mean, Banjo-Tooie is one of my favorite games of all time. I hate Grunny Industries. I don't like Grunny I don't care how many times people on the DK Vine staff talk up Grunny Industries and why it's actually brilliant. I'm just like, yeah, but it also sucks, and I don't want to go into it. And that's where the game really just kind of stops for me, and I have to really muster the energy to get through it. So, I mean, we all have those pressure points. Nobody is the same, and we're all after different stuff. I think Bonanza, what it gets right, is that it's able to endear itself to such a wildly diverse amount of people, even people who aren't necessarily Donkey Kong fans.
Yeah, this is definitely my favorite mechanical, like the mechanics of the level. It's my favorite. I'd say, like, theming wise, I really like the Tempest layer and a different layer that we haven't gotten to yet.
Yeah. I think, like, weirdly, like, comparing this to other layers, especially other comparable layers, like layers with elders, layers where you learn Bonanzas, I think my least favorite might be Forest Layer. And I think my favorite might be Radiance Layer. It's weird, because you would think, oh, a forest, ooh, ostriches, like that would be my thing, that would be my jam. Ooh, brambles, ooh, but I don't know, it just, I maybe also Forest Layer was when I was like really, really sick with COVID, and so I have negative associations with just everything from that point in time. But yeah, I adore this layer. Sorry, Chocolate Milk Drinker. Just Andre says those famous forest dwelling animals, ostriches. Well, no, but I'm saying I love forests and I love ostriches. I'm not saying I necessarily love the two together. Okay?
Giga Strike said I wasn't a huge fan of the final platforming segments where you can't see the ground well, but I did like the sandy portion of the same sublayer.
Yeah, I would say Serpent Sands is an all-timer for me. Like it's one of my absolutely favorite locations in Bonanza. But again, like this is stuff we are going to be debating as fans for decades to come. I mean, I will be having arguments about the best layer of Bonanza on my deathbed. That will be how I spend my final hours in this mortal realm, is just having bullshit arguments like this. And chocolate milk drinker, you said I'm doing enough. I'm living my best life, so I'm going to pass on then with a smile on my face, knowing I did all I could with what little time I had. So yeah, thank you.
We have to start coming up with fan theories that Trouser is actually from the Radiance Layer, and then people will like it more.
Oh yeah, yeah. There for all the references to tubes, there weren't nearly enough cock jokes in this layer, and that's where no former Rare employees worked here. All right, let's go ahead and play our second call. Thank you for the call, Chocolate Milk Drinker.
Hello, Joy. Hello, Hyle. I'm calling in for the Radiance Layer. By the way, I'm sorry, formerly Kiddy Kong Facts. We had double trouble in the racing layer, but no sign of Kiddy Kong at all. That must have sucked. But, the Radiance Layer should be a pretty good, consolation prize. We get these little snake boys, in this layer. The snake Bonanza kind of looks like Radley, but the snakes really kind of don't at all. I know they're both cartoon snakes, but, they have different facial structures. The snakes seem to be a lot smaller than Radley would be. And even the snake elders just kind of has different proportions and whatnot. It's a little bit strange because the ostriches, the posh ostriches, obviously look a lot like Espresso. It's just a visual reference, but it's clear that's what they had in mind the whole time. I think here they might have thought of the idea of snakes first, and they're like, hey, Radley's a Donkey Kong snake. Maybe the Bonanza should be a bit more like Radley. That's just speculation, but it wouldn't surprise me if that's how it went. I think probably my favorite part of this layer visually is when you break out onto the surface after you turn the synthetic sun back on, and it's kind of eerie because there's just this whole landscape of white sand. You have the Voidco guys having their own structures. It kind of looks like a big expanse of snow, like a tundra or something. Because it has snow sculptures. It's like a big desolate plain of white, but it's not. It's supposed to be this kind of warm desert, and I don't know, that kind of. Maybe just don't think of white deserts that much, but it was kind of unnerving in an interesting way. I want to end off with a little bit of a narrative question, which is interesting. So, after you beat Poppy Kong and she gives up, you talk to her afterwards, and she's like, oh, Pauline, that singing power of yours is really special. Pauline's like, it's not. And I didn't really know how to interpret that. I think it might have something to do with, she's still in the mode where she has to, stop Poppy Kong from taking advantage of her, so she's trying to, downplay her own abilities, because if Voidco's interested in her, it means they're still going to try to capture her. But what are your thoughts on it? Maybe I missed something. I have to end the call now because I'm about to be swallowed by a giant eel.
Oh man, we're losing people left and right to this eel. Oh God, it's complete carnage. I won't have any patrons left by the end of this. Everybody in a live stream, watch out. S. Monaco, you just joined us. Watch out. Get out of here. The eel's on the loose.
I guess even Donkey Kong was eaten by an eel in the movie.
That's true. That's true. Man, everybody's getting swallowed. So you brought up a lot of the similar points that we brought up vis-a-vis animal buddies and their relation to the Bonanzas. But your question at the end, I'm glad you brought that up, because at this point in the narrative, I'm wondering, is Pauline supposed to be some sort of meta-human or mutant? Because everybody's going on about her power, right? And I'm like, she can obviously sing, but they're treating it like it's a very unique thing to Pauline. Like, she has a genetic abnormality that makes her extremely powerful and makes her ability very unique than if they were to just abduct somebody like Dionne Warwick. I don't understand why it has to be Pauline. And so I'm thinking, do they know something about her? Is she some sort of the next stage in human evolution or something? I don't know.
kind of thought she just has big anxiety, which is why she denies that she has powers.
I know she has anxiety, but I'm trying to think the next level. Like, I'm trying to think, like, from Void Kong's perspective, from Poppy's perspective, is there something about her singing ability that makes her different than any other talented singer in the world? So, I don't know. It's something to consider as we continue to progress towards the planet core. Chocolate Milk Drinker screams, what if they abducted Eminem? I would not hate Radiance Layer then. Yeah, I'm not sure if Eminem has the dulcet tones needed for what they have in mind, but I mean, maybe we could just try out a whole bunch of different singers from the mid to late 20th century and 21st century and see if they can have the same effect that Voidco is trying to get with Pauline. And just the Banana My Pog says, she's little, easier to shove in a rucksack. Celine Dion is not pocketable. I guess, but they can just turn her into a rock, and I mean, okay, well. With Celine Dion, at least we would have gotten the musical cue of My Heart Will Go On as Pauline gets swallowed, or in this case, Celine gets swallowed. There's not enough needle drops in Bonanza. All right, thank you for the call. Hopefully you resolve that eel situation so you can call again. Let's play our third caller.
Hey, Kongversation, this is Just Andre calling in to not talk about Radiance Layer, no. When I was playing through Bonanza, this was the first layer I knew I absolutely had to call in for whenever the show got to it. And the one and only reason why is snakes. I don't know if you've ever had a moment where you're like really caught up in feeling something and then after like a full minute or two you realize your face has just been like stuck making one really exaggerated expression, then like maybe you try to hold your face that way for a little while longer so you can like get a selfie of what you were doing. But that's exactly what happened to me when I found the first NPC in Radiance Layer, and it hit me that I was about to get a whole society of snakes. It's great that the game uses the snakes to explain how there's sunlight in the underground world by making them the inventors of the artificial suns. But why do that with snakes and not one of the animals that are smarter in real life that you'd expect to invent things like monkeys or the elephants? Well, what is it that makes snakes physiologically different than all four of the other sapient animal species we meet? They're cold-blooded. Snakes, they don't just have to keep themselves fed, they also have to bask in sunlight in order for their bodies to remain active. They didn't just fill the underground with artificial suns for, like, convenience. They had to do it as a survival mechanism if they didn't want to just stay trapped in the Radiance Layer. In the same way, when the ground starts shaking later from what Voidco's doing, you can see the nearby snakes react to it really intensely, even though the shaking isn't that hard and it only happens for like a second at a time. And we actually see the fractones do this elsewhere, where they talk about sounds that the player can't even hear being too loud for them. But the fractones and the snakes are the only species this happens to. Why is that? Because snakes don't have ears. Their sense of touch is just so acute that they can still detect the vibrations from the noises around them even when they're in normal volume, as if they did have a sense of hearing. So of course they'd be extra sensitive to the ground shaking. Something about the way that the Donkey Kong Country series changed as it went on that people talk about a lot is how it's always gone out of its way to keep one foot in naturalism, but at the same time it's grown less and less naturalistic as new games have come out. But a lot of the time, people concentrate on like the environmental designer interactions instead of the other thing the series did really differently when it started out, and that's the way it approaches animals. Aside from the Kremlings, Donkey Kong Country's enemies, not only were they just real animal species with cartoony eyes, but enemies like Slippas or Clambos or Croctopuses, it was hard to notice the eyes. They just looked like real animals, and then as early as Country 2, you start getting more exaggerated designs like Cat or Ninetails, and in games like Returns, there weren't even animals, they were just like weirdos a lot of the time. But it's just Andre again, just wrapping up. So yeah, it might be weird in light of the way the series has changed since Country 1. It may be weird for me to say that Bonanza is the game that most loves animals since that first Donkey Kong Country. Since even its animal enemies are all just artificial, and all the actual animals it puts a spotlight on are talking and standing upright, but it's true. Bonanza doesn't take inspiration from animals as they've been employed design-wise by the Donkey Kong Country games. It takes inspiration from animals, and that's just really special. All right, that's all. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much for the calls, actually, Andre. God, you really made me think about some things that I hadn't even put together. The freak who spent hours and hours and hours in this world. I don't know enough about the cold-blooded animals. I am not that I ever fancy myself an expert on anything but Donkey Kong lore, and in some cases Beatles trivia, but like I don't know nearly enough about snakes. We were just talking earlier when we were talking about the elder wearing headphones. Like, do snakes even have ears? And Andre spells it out for us here. You know, they feel things through vibration. And I still love, like, that could still work with the headphones. You know, you're just feeling the vibrations of the beats versus actually hearing them.
Yeah.
But just such great points about how the snakes react to the shaking ground and why it makes sense to have the snakes at this point in the narrative when the daddy eel is about to take Pauline. It just makes sense that they would be the ones responding to that approaching nightmare, and also the point about them needing to bask in the suns. My God, I never thought about this.
Yeah, it's all good points. I kind of just thought that they just wanted to do like the funny thing where like it's the animals that don't have hands that are the inventors.
Because it's
But I guess
dumb.
it makes sense that they... Yeah.
It does make sense.
I thought it was just a bit of comedy, but it does make sense logically as well.
And it also is a really good point about Bonanza just being inspired by the animal kingdom. I mean, he does it in different ways than the original Donkey Kong Country did, but it is something that is worth pointing out because I think a lot of times the key to making a successful legacy sequel of something that has been around for decades and everybody has their preferred interpretation of it is not necessarily just doing another one or pulling reference points from the series as it exists. It's the trap that something like Star Wars will fall into, right? Where you're making a Star Wars, but your point of reference is just other Star Wars, where the original Star Wars was inspired by Kurosawa films or old westerns, or, you know, like it's not necessarily just George Lucas had a Star Wars in his mind, so he made a Star Wars. And I think Bonanza is pulling from maybe some of the same points of inspiration that the original Donkey Kong Country was, while at the same time doing stuff like embracing the full history of the series, having little fan servicey things like a big Lurchin fossil in the desert. And at the same time, that is why Bonanza might feel so thematically on point for so much of the game. And why it doesn't just feel like, oh, here's EPD 8 doing another 3D platformer. Doesn't it feel like Mario, but starring Donkey Kong? No, it feels like a Donkey Kong game because they are not pulling from the same inspiration points that a Mario game would pull from. They're pulling from what Rare originally pulled from, and that is the Animal Kingdom. Just wonderful insights, Andre. Insights that I'm now mad that we didn't think of. And I'm going to go to bed angry and hateful towards myself as a result. So even though I applaud your call, you have sent me into a downward spiral for the rest of the week. Thank you so much. Chocolate Milk Drinker says, this is how I found out what cold-blooded animals need to survive a Donkey Kong podcast. Well, yeah, we educate, don't we? We don't just have fun here. We learn something about ourselves and about our fellow inhabitants on this orb called Earth.
And Alter Mentality in
Courtney
chat is also mentioning that like elephants are actually very good at becoming like weatherologists because they can detect rain from 100 miles away. So there's actual research on that.
Son of a bitch.
They thought out everything.
Bonanza really is the perfect game. God.
Yeah. We need to get more zoologists on conversation, it seems.
Clearly, we just need to stop talking about Donkey Kong, and I need to retire, and we just need to become Zoofax, the podcast. Thank you so much for the call. We have one more call, and once again, 3 out of 4, it's from somebody in our live stream right now. So let's just hear what they have to say beyond what they're commenting on in the chat.
Hey, it's Courtney. I've been holding on to this thought for a long time, but now you know all the elders are DJs, right? Well, who else do we know in the DKU who inexplicably abandoned their previous career to become a DJ? That's right, Jam Jars. The shock of his brother's death, even though he did get better, caused him to reevaluate his military lifestyle and pursue peace and music and wisdom. He's now in the process of becoming the Mole Elder, and in the future, maybe he can teach DK a thing or two, just like he taught Banjo and Kazooie. But while you fantasize about what the Mole Bonanza might entail, I should probably talk about this actual layer, or specifically how the entire Bonanza form of this layer is based on one of my favorite animal buddies, Radley. Pauline even gets an outfit that makes her look like Radley, and I need not remind you of the lore tablet in the freezer layer that suggests the snake himself has been there. Why does Radley haunt the narrative of this game so much? Do you think the devs had a special soft spot for him? Do you think he's originally from the Radiance Layer before making his way up to Crocodile Isle, seeing the Kremling's oppression and saying, "This cannot stand! And neither can I, but I can curl myself up into a spring," which is kind of the same thing. The only missed opportunity is that the Snake Bonanza song isn't just Snakey Shanty, but it does sound like a Lady Gaga song instead, which I'm cool with. Thank you, and keep spreading the good word of our hero Radley. I am so excited about talking more about this game with you soon. Hope you're having fun. Bye!
Thank you, Courtney. Yeah, Radley, like we said, Radley's fame and how it extends so far, wide, and now deep is one of the great mysteries of not just the Donkey Kong universe, but the greater Nintendo multiverse as well. Like, I can't explain it, but I love that it is somehow a reoccurring, not gag, but go-to point for so many different teams and studios throughout the years. I don't know. It's, at this point, assume nothing but the fact that Radley will be referenced in a video game.
Yep. Also, on the topic of other DJs,
Yeah,
one of Kiddy Kong's beta names was DJ Kong.
that's right.
So
Yeah.
It all ties into Kiddy Kong.
DJ Kong, Diaper Kong. I was thinking when Courtney was first alluding to who else do we know abandoned their career to become a DJ? I was thinking about Cranky in the DK rap, but I guess he must have been a very poor DJ considering he didn't stick with it beyond just that one music video.
Yeah.
But yeah, like Jam Jars, I'd be interested to see him again and how he's perhaps, hopefully mellowed a little bit in the last, oh God, how long has it been since Nuts and Bolts? I don't even want to do that math. 17 years? God. Anyway, thank you again. God, Courtney, now you've brought me down because I have been faced with my own mortality. I made the joke about being on my deathbed earlier, but now it feels ever more near. And Andre made me feel inadequate. And now you have made me feel like I am old and decrepit. And it's really ending things on a sour note. So thank you for your insights. At least Chocolate Milk Drinker called in and just cast their ire towards this world itself. I didn't feel bad as a result. Chocolate Milk Drinker really... Okay, now Chocolate Milk Drinker makes me feel bad because Chocolate Milk Drinker points out they weren't even born yet when Nuts and Bolts came out. God. All right, now you've done a Chocolate Milk Drinker. Now, 3 out of the 4 calls made me feel like shit. So, final thoughts. No, thank you everyone for calling. In my opinion, and I know some people disagree apparently, but in my opinion, Radiance Layer is when Donkey Kong Bananza is finally properly unleashed in all of its glory. Because this is where you obtain the full moveset. You have every Bonanza. Most of the terrain is now in play as well. And the story itself is no longer in this holding pattern status quo. From here on out, the story moves fast, it moves quick, the status quo changes, and things get wild. And, like, I think Donkey Kong Bananza's Radiance Layer is where I really came to the conclusion that, oh my god, I think I like Donkey Kong Bananza more than Banjo-Kazooie. I think it's almost cemented now. Like, Bonanza could still really go bad towards the end, but it would still be one of my favorite games of all time. I don't know, like, I think this is where it really did seal the deal for me. What about you?
Yeah, I really loved the Radiance Layer. Like I said, like the mechanics of the level of the layer were so good. And it really does a lot of world building with like the little details in this world of like to just establish a lot of stuff about the entire game.
Yeah.
And yeah, like having all the Bonanzas gives you so many more abilities. I kind of wish we had like a spider one just so you could be like, you could build your own platforms like we do.
Right.
With Squitter. But that would probably be pretty terrifying looking. They turn Donkey Kong into a spider.
Plus, you have to save something for the sequel, right? But I mean, yeah. I'm joking because, as we all know, there is not going to be a sequel to Donkey Kong Bananza because this layer, this world ends with Pauline getting swallowed by an eel and presumably dying. Donkey Kong passes out and falls down a big shaft and never seen again. A true scary story to tell in the dark. R.I.P. Radiance ingested Pauline. Am I right? So that ends our Donkey Kong Bananza coverage. Tune in next time to the Kongversation for more Dunk Dunk.
This has been a File 2 production.
¡Qué rico!